Hey, everybody, and welcome back to an all-new X's for Show, your premier media content show where we take a look at all the week's best stuff. I'm Nico, and you can check me out at Nico Action. It's NICOACTION, and you can check the show out at X's for Show on all your social medias.
And I'm TK. You can find me at TK Elemental.
And that makes me Kevo, and you can find me over at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALLY.
And we're here for when strange noises creak in doorless chambers, and every one of the incredible lines that Thor Ravenscroft says to kick off the Haunted Mansion. This one's a little special to listen. A little
This
special.
is a Nico passion project here.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit, but
Kevo, is this a Kevo passion project? I don't think I asked that at all in this whole thing.
It's definitely in the Kevo genres, but this specific topic, I would say, is definitely more of a Nico thing for sure. This is his baby.
Dear viewers, you cannot imagine the excitement and energy with which Nico approached this particular project. Not at all even just the movie. We were all like, okay, we're gonna go see the movie because it's out this week. But as soon as that became the thing, this gentleman went to absolute town on this particular topic, and it has been quite fun to watch because I feel like I know him well, but I did not expect it to go as hard as it went for the Haunted Mansion of all things. But
Absolutely.
now I'm kind of into it.
I mean, the thing is, we've always both been really big Disney people, and
Well,
Nico's
that,
a very
of
big
course.
horror person. And, when Disney attempts horror, it is a very fascinating thing to see. And so this is definitely peak Disney scary.
And I think one of the things about Disney Scary is you kind of have to ask yourself how scary it's really allowed to be, right? We talk a little bit about the controlled experience and, Disney will never go there. They'll never be that scary. And maybe that's a good thing because one of the things the Disney parks are meant to be is able to be accessible to anyone who attends. So if you're going and you're expecting an experience to be sitting in the middle of the park that isn't accessible to, I don't know, 30% of the guests, I mean, by that same token, then you're also talking about things like why not just design the ride vehicle to be sizest? Why not just continue to design attractions in a way that prohibit people's involvement? Because some people don't have the ability, literally, medically, to sustain a jump scare. And so we're going to talk about the removal of all of the good jump scares. Anyway, we're here to talk about the Haunted Mansion. This was, of course, a pet project of Walt Disney's way before it was a pet project of mine. Now, one of the things that's also important to note, Disneyland, right? So the motherfucker opened in 1955. And when it opened, it did not open with all the attractions you're thinking. You're looking for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Space Mountain. You're looking the wrong places. And so a lot of the attractions we associate with common Disneyality came from the 1964 World's Fair and a number of the sort of around it projects. So for those of you who do or don't love It's a Small World, you can thank 1964, not 1955. But that's also of note because the Haunted Mansion wasn't added until much later. Now, the Haunted Mansion has some weird origins, and we're going to talk about the different origins, the different parks, actually. This is one that's weird. Haunted Mansion kind of moves all over the place. It's not like most Disney attractions, which find a home and stay there. It's why you never go to Tomorrowland and go, what the hell, Winnie the Pooh? You know what I mean? There's a reason behind it. A method. So now, but I do want to start with one question. I was over entitled as a kid, and we went to Disney a lot. A lot. And so, for me, it was how many times could I ride the Haunted Mansion in a year, despite living in New Jersey? That's definitely a sign. And not that I didn't have, because Jersey is unique with horror. I'm sure every state is. I'm sure there's spooky stories about everything. But I don't know. In LA, I imagine all of the horror stories involve gridlock. And in, Maryland, I'm sure they all involve the Baltimore harbor smell. So that's a joke. I love both of those places a lot because I'm talking about Jersey, so I had to pick on somewhere, right?
You just don't love crab, and that's okay.
I just don't. I really don't love seafood. But, Jersey is famous for the Jersey Devil and, Keep Asbury Weird. Hey, it's one of the It's one of the best things about our show, one of
Hi,
our happy
Robbie.
haunts, right? So, all right, I just rambled a whole lot. And Robbie, while we're doing this, you can you chime in with your answer. So, me, Disney, all my life, Haunted Mansion, nonstop. Teak, what was your first haunted mansioning? Do you like have like a different attraction or a different theme park or amusement park? Or you, is for you the Haunted Mansion the house you grew up in? You know, and then Kevo, your turn.
I mean, I come from the home of Stephen King.
You're Joe
True.
Hill.
Maine is, I wish I was Joe Hill, the life I would be living right now. Maine is entirely haunted. Everything is a ghost here. Don't come. It's rough. It's very spooky.
Well, I mean, it helps that you have one of the highest average ages of any state.
Yeah, I mean, like, people are becoming ghosts before your very eyes every day. Like, it's their profession. So, spooky as shit. I, like you, went to Disney. Not like you, because I think we've established.
I
now
don't
that,
like you.
I do not like you.
I'm glad you're dead.
We've established that you went a lot, but my sister and my brother-in-law, worked at and for Disney and for Disney hotels for a long time.
For one of the good ones.
Oh, good for them.
Let's not go crazy here. But it meant that we were just there a lot. You know, they had passes, they had like time to kill, so we did a lot of Disney. I don't even remember when my first Haunted Mansion was. It had to have been before I was 10. I think by the time I was 15, I really didn't care one way or the other about it. And by then, I was really converting into comic book horror, which is why I am shocked that until you put them before me, I had not read these SLG Haunted Mansion books, which are phenomenal, and I'm so excited to talk about. Kevo, let's kick it to you.
Kicks my ghost.
First to chime in on that, yeah, amazing. Put some amazing stuff out there, and a lot of people didn't see it, and so I'm glad a lot of titles are getting second light, like the older Gargoyle stuff from them. You know, they did some really awesome Disney properties, but it just was a weird time for them to be doing them with such an indie title, and it sucked. Gosh, what was my first Haunted Mansion experience? I don't really remember. I feel like my mom would have been afraid of the Haunted Mansion, so I don't think we would have gone on it when I was a kid with my family.
Your mother was specifically spooked by the Haunted Mansion.
That doesn't surprise me. So probably not until I was a teen. Gosh, maybe not even until you, now that I'm really thinking about it, because I didn't have as much going to the parks experience. I went to Disney World, I think, 3 times before you. And now I have gone 50 million times with you. But we went twice as a family, and I went once in high school on a band trip, and that's it. But I think the more special one that I have more vivid, active memories of is going on Haunted Holiday Mansion in 2009 or 2010 when we went to Disneyland together for the first time. Which was so cool because it really showed how even an attraction that you can be used to can be spun in such a really interesting way.
Now, I want to jump from that and jump on some of what are getting in the comments. You know, you, Kevo, and TK both said that like Haunted Mansion wasn't like your staple growing up. You had other spooks that you spooked out on, right? And, you know, to see Robbie say over in the comments that Resident Evil was a staple in his household growing up and that his 3 brothers are older and he watched them play. I had hot older cousins for that.
For me, like horror, I didn't really do ghost horror until later. For me, horror was the horror movies of the mid-90s. The Craft, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend.
Halloween H2O. I'm talking to you, Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis.
100%. Madame Leota herself, killing it in horror since the 70s.
Like
She
that
was. She was so good. I'm gonna
she
have a
was
lot of really positive comments. You can say a lot of bad shit about this movie, but if you try to say one bad thing about the acting, we have to have a different conversation.
no, she
And
was dynamite. And always has been. I mean, like you put Jamie Lee Curtis in a
she
horror
was so
movie,
good.
it's just what you ought to do. You should always have a role prepared for Jamie Lee Curtis in your horror movie. And if she doesn't accept it, that's fine. You can move on. But you
Let's
should have
finish
it
this,
carved out
Michael.
for her. Yes.
But I love that she got to lean into her comedy for this too, because she doesn't get enough credit, and especially like one of our favorite Jamie Lee Curtis performances is from a
Rip.
Disney attraction film,
Stupid Judy.
from from Ellen's Energy Ride, which used to be in Epcot, and she was the antagonist of that attraction, and it was hilarious.
Her role is kind of emblematic of what the Haunted Mansion is, which is, taking horror tropes and standards of horror and making them fun and accessible. And I actually like
Agreed.
the movie does have some problems we're going to talk about, but the first thing I started to get into about it was this is actually a really healthy and good movie for a young person to not
to learn
think of death
fear.
as the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and scares too, like just scares of life and horror.
Yes.
Like the tropes. It's a smooth introduction, but it also really does kind of say, yeah, literally everybody dies. There are also ways to celebrate it. There's ways to have fun. There's ways that it can be both scary and, that scariness can be a fun, good thing. And, Jamie Lee Curtis, horror queen in this kind of a little bit campier comedy role, speaks exactly to how we process horror, and then how Disney's obviously going to do it, because they're not going to do, Hostel.
Well, since we're not talking about Hostel, let's talk about what we are talking about for a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about the origins of the Haunted Mansion. Walt was a weird guy, really. Like, we make jokes about the guy had a train set in his backyard, and that's where they got the idea for silver spoons, and like, what a funny little man he was. But like, no, Walt was an odd man. And I say that as an odd man. I say that
stuff done.
odd men get stuff done. And like, I really do recognize that as I'm saying, he was an unusual person. Part of that means he was drawn to unusual things. Now, he came up with this theme park, which had never existed before, and these, full-length animated movies. But, the origins of Haunted Mansion really do go back pretty far. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the origins of Haunted Mansion and where a lot of those things come from. And the earliest work on the attraction starts all the way back with a guy named Ken Anderson, who was given the task by Walt of coming up with a Museum of the Weird, a spooky attraction for Disneyland to add later on after so many years of not having something so spooky. And what he came up with wound up being like kicked out of the attraction over and over again. He came up with Captain Gore. He came up with Bloodmere Manor. Now, all of these things eventually like show up in Disney canon in little places here and there. There's even some really exciting things where like early elements of Museum of the Weird, which would go on to become Seekers of the Weird, actually became like a Marvel comic book. So like all of this earliest stuff isn't gone forever, but you can really see where this attraction took years, and creator after creator, the design work took time. And that's the thing that I think people don't appreciate. When we talk about comics on this show, sometimes we talk about how a Marvel comic will be first introduced as an idea like backstage in 2013. Someone will be like, oh, we need I'm just making this up, we need a young black male to be Storm's protege. And they will start working on him in 2013. And hopefully he comes out in 2017. For attractions at Disney, they start work in 2013, and hopefully the attraction opens in 2012. I'm sorry, in 2022. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
It's a much longer thing. It's a much more complicated process. And we're talking about 60, 70 years ago when things like equipment were just different.
Kevo, if you scroll over to that first image, that coffin that you see down there makes an appearance in the Seekers of the Weird comic book. It is kind of the central MacGuffin of the Seekers of the Weird comic.
Wow.
And this is my first time seeing this image that you've prepared, and so I was completely blown away because I just finished that book last night, and like again, we're gonna get into the comics.
It's
but
slightly better than the Haunted Mansion comic, the Disney
there's a trade
comics one.
paperback that is Disney Kingdom's Haunted Mansion and Seekers of the Weird. I'm a little bummed that both are not films already, and that we just did a Haunted Mansion film that is not the story in Disney Kingdom's Haunted Mansion, because that story is perfect and ready to print. It is ready to go to film. It is, like I said, it's shot for shot, storyboarded, ready to go, just make it. And Seekers of the Weird is a property that's like ready to go and is magic, horror. You could figure out how to connect it to the Haunted Mansion.
You can see like the Dali-esque surrealism that Walt was playing with at this point in his identity.
I mean, it's really a gorgeous ode to old, early 20th century ideals. And they're both they're great books, but that, seeing that coffin right there, you could just, bravo to Disney for never letting go of this thing that they had and finding a way to put it somewhere.
I love you saying that, because the thing I wanted to point to that as we were looking at this image is the first one that caught my eye was how much this looks like the classic Donald chair from
the Donald
hallway
chair
that we love so much. There's a chair in one of the hallways at Haunted Mansion where the angular pattern on it is meant to look like Donald Duck's face, and it's a lot like this. But then
it's actually the chair that throws Tiffany Haddish out in the beginning of the movie, that makes it look like she's in a doom buggy, and then she gets spat out.
Noticing this headdress in comparison to the Madame Leota look from the film, all of these things that they really do a lot in so many of the different Haunted Mansion projects to use so much of the material that exists in a really beautiful way. And it's just really cool to see.
Kevo, I love that you called that, because, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, a llama? He's supposed to be dead. And, like, that you saw the Leota is even better.
Leota?
I also can't stop thinking that chair looks a little bit like Mikhail Rasputin.
Yeah, a little Jafar, a little Ferengi too, because those look kind of like ears. So
now, these early versions of the Haunted Mansion ultimately would not culminate in anything significant, but things like Captain Gore would go on to be a portrait in the Haunted Mansion and give rise to one of the most successful enterprises Disney has ever managed, Pirates of the Caribbean. Originally Walt Disney World wasn't going to have a Pirates of the Caribbean because Disneyland had it, but they were afraid of cultural issues that, like, people would be like, oh, we're calling like Mexicans and Latin Americans pirates down here. It's only okay to do that to Mexicans in California. It's not okay to do that to Mexicans in Florida. And the overwhelming,
which is amusingly far closer to the Caribbean.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, the overall response from foreign guests was, where are the pirates? And so they built it really fast, and they built it missing scenes. It's ultimately missing 3 major sequences that Disneyland has, and one of them is so good it literally makes Disney World's almost not worth riding. The bayou scene in Disneyland is so good, it makes Disney World's pirates seem iffy, but then Disney World's Haunted Mansion has 3 additional scenes that Disneyland's doesn't. So anyway.
It evens out, yeah.
Whenever you say Pirates without doing of the Caribbean, I just think of Pirates, the porn spoof.
Oh, okay. I was like, the song by Tori Amos.
I wish.
So I do want to bring up something that I think is like, this is magic for me. When I talk about loving Disney, I had this really big Disney sans. So like my family raised me on Disney, like I've mentioned, but I really lost touch with Disney around the time I kind of got in touch with Guys' Butts. around like 14 and 15 years old, as like my puberty was rising, my Disney was like leveling off because I didn't think it was cool to love Mickey Mouse and be like a dude. And what happened was at like 15 or 16, I was just so anti-Disney that my parents were like, "You want to go to Disney with your dad?" And I was like, "No." And so my sister went to Disney with my dad, and I did something else with my mom. And it was like, it was cool. But then my parents were like, when I was 18, no choice. Everyone's going to Disney as a family. Shut up. You're going on vacation. Be grateful. And I was like, okay. And we
you guys
went.
had no like kids, right?
No.
This was not done for kids.
No, it's done because my family are like Disney Anya. Like this is
Yeah.
like a thing we do. Like people go on cruises.
I stopped at a similar time, and then my niece and nephew were born, and so that's how I started going back.
My family
But
never
we only
stopped.
recently had that. We only recently got
Yeah.
the nephews on his side. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just that's his dad. It was for his dad.
I love
And
that.
as I remember walking off the monorail and seeing the train station, which is many of people like in the theme park crew world know it's the curtain, right? And so I saw the show curtain, and I remembered what it meant to see the train station, and the angularity of the train station is designed such that there's almost no angle you can see the castle as you approach the train station because it's a curtain, and the curtain is pulled back so that you see the magic of the castle. And I remember being so struck by it that it changed the trajectory of my life, and I started working for the Walt Disney Company within 1 year. I changed everything because this changed me, and it's why this show exists. It changed my understanding of showmanship. And one of the things that really got me through feeling like, oh my God, it was always years between trips to my parks. It was often 2 months. And the thing that got me through was I had a large collection of Disney audio. There was the 50th anniversary Red Box CD box set. There was the Story and Song of Disneyland. There's a lot of classic records, but
They have an
few.
enormous archive.
It's incredible.
That a lot of it still remains unpublished, but you would be fascinated. I mean, not the three of you, because but dear listener and or watcher, you'd be fascinated at what is just kind of sitting there waiting to be released. And I think Story and Song of Haunted Mansion is kind of one of those.
It's available, but it's not available in any nice form. It's available.
There's no like you can find like a vintage LP, but they haven't really done. It's not part of any collection.
There's a limited pressing CD. That's it.
Yeah,
and it's cardboardy. It's not even like a real CD. It's like if you want it, you can find it.
We have an enormous used record store here that actually I've been meaning to take you to whenever you come visit, but they basically for almost the entire time you've come up, they've been shut down or like only, by appointment. And they finally found a new storefront, and it's what used to be the seediest sex shop I have ever seen in my entire life, which was in Portland, Maine. It was disgusting. And now it is this like enormous vintage record store, but I've been going there all week talking to Bob, the owner. This is Empire Records in Portland for anybody who might know, being like,
Damn the
hey,
man,
like,
save the empire.
If if you ever, do you have this? And he's like, look, because I have no idea. This place is enormous and I don't know what I have. But also I was like, because he's always getting new records. If you find it, please set it aside for me. And, he knows how to get in touch with me. I'll come get it, because it just, the first time I listened to it, I mean, it's dumb, but
It's
now
so
I'm a little
stupid.
bit in love with it.
Yeah. And did you catch who the male vocal performer was?
The narrator or the Mike?
Mike.
No.
You mean you didn't recognize a young Ron Howard?
Oh, God damn it.
Which just makes
Ronnie
his
back
daughter being Bryce Dallas Howard, the first woman to direct a Star Wars project, making them Disney legends, him directing parts of Solo. And for the sake of this, he directed the great parts.
First woman on the moon. Very impressive. Go, Bryce.
Exactly. Bryce Dallas Howard, first woman to make me love Mary Jane. Oh, wait, no. She was a redheaded Gwen Stacy. Right.
Womp. Wait, which one? Oh, in Tobey Maguire.
Yes.
Yeah. Fudge. Ooh, boy.
No, she was blonde then. They blonded her.
Yeah, she was blonde then. Because I was thinking about, because it's what's her name in Andrew Garfield's, and she does die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Another redhead that they make a blonde. Interesting. But on
Although-
Bryce, it just makes her a tall glass of milk.
I do want to say anybody who really needs to spend $125 twice this coming week, God, I have $250 for you to say goodbye to and never say hello to again. The complete Spider-Gwen initial omnibus is getting a new printing this month. It has every page that matters. It's almost as beautiful as John Hickman's Secret Wars omnibus printing volume 2. That thing is worth its weight in platinum. So
Damn.
yeah, a couple of big omnis to pick up. Anyway, so this was something that for me was really emotional to share with you, Teak, because something that I'm seeing myself get more and more into, but I yet to have the enormity of the dedication you have to the medium and the art form is your love of sort of like audio drama and podcast as a narrative medium. And I feel like one of the things about Story and Song from the Haunted Mansion is kind of saying to me that a guy like Walt Disney, whose whole thing was always keep moving forward, his whole thing was keep moving forward by never forgetting where you came from. To him, this was an audio drama a la vaudeville on the radio.
Yep.
And
this came from somebody who lived their life being
Yes.
entertained by radio audio dramas when it simply was not possible to produce visual storytelling that was, economical and affordable to access. This is how we got things like War of the Worlds. One of
yes,
the most amazing and potentially killer audio dramas in the history of the medium. For years, I had a friend who would tell everybody that that's how his grandparents died, and we all finally figured out that the math didn't add up.
okay, your friend is the bomb, though.
Yeah, I was like, that's a way to go. That if you're going to pick a lie, my grandparents killed themselves in the panic of listening to War of the Worlds is a banger excuse.
It's personally why I could never sit through lit class. I had a friend who was like, I have my period all the time. I can't take gym. I can't sit through lit class because a book killed my mom.
Yeah.
So
go ask Alice. That'll do it to you every time.
She'll tell you.
Grits. Wrong Alice.
Completely wrong Alice. Though I like to think at some point they might have met on her wild journeys, hitchhiking and taking all kinds of drugs. Anyway, I love this. I loved this. It was it had to say, unfortunately, had the same problem that the Haunted Mansion movie did, which is nobody realizes that the gold is the ghosts.
The gold is the ghosts being 1,000 million different characters.
You literally have 999. That's the pitch. The pitch is there's 999 of them there, and might there be one more for a clean 1,000. And there's different reasons, in whatever the canon is, why you might want one more. But the point is, that's a ton of characters. And, there are very clear, famous ones. The Hatbox Ghost, the Duelist, the Bride.
Fatty.
What's that?
There's a guy named Fatty. I'm in love with Fatty. There's
the
3 ghosts.
Ghost.
Yeah,
he
the
likes
joke.
to hit that one most.
The fat one who wants to come home with you. He always just looks like he'd share a sandwich with me, and I always think he'd make a really good friend.
That's very sweet. So you're going to see these characters, but the comics are so great because they all recognize that this is the gold, and they're primarily focused on the ghosts. The Haunted Mansion audio drama is also really quick, so it's not that big a deal that it doesn't have the ghosts, because it's just kind of, it's almost a pitch to go to Disneyland.
That's actually what it was. It was meant to raise money to build Haunted Mansion. They'd run way over budget, and they were like, what, we made enough money to build Disneyland off of my personal choice for instrumental record of all time, Walt Disney Takes You to Disneyland. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like 40 minutes of area music that wound up almost none of it being used in the parks.
Oh, dude, I am so excited for you to play Illusion Island because David Housden gets it, and David Housden is like my second or third favorite video game music composer after Danny Baranowski and Toru Minagishi, who does Splatoon. He gets it on a level that the first song is a hymn song and him being like, hey, I do Disney. And then every other track is like, I could have composed this in 1964 for Walt Disney personally. And it's just so banger. I'm stoked. We're going to talk about Illusion Island later. Stoked about that. But yes. Anyway, this, you can tell this is kind of a pitch for the attraction, in that everything is kind of like, oh, that's cool, I want to go experience it for myself. And while my brain is so addled with experiences and like stuff that I could never like quite get into it, I can understand how, if you were a young person of this time, this would be incredibly immersive, and you would immediately be like, start saving my pennies because we're going to Disneyland because I want to go do the Haunted Mansion.
And I just want to say, while we're talking about composers, anybody who wonders who Nico's favorite parks composers of all time are, number one, Xavier Stasio, who composed Grim Grinning Ghosts, and Pirates of the Caribbean, and just about everything that's creepy in the history of Disney annals. The Sherman Brothers are responsible for my favorite prayer of all time, because if you slow down It's a Small World and like legitimately think about the fact that there could be an atom bomb any day, and you just sing it real slow and think about everybody in the world holding hands and trying to stop the bomb just by wanting to survive, it's actually the most powerful prayer in the world. And that's what it was written to be. It was written to be a prayer against violence. And having gotten to see Richard Sherman sing it that way at his piano is like one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. And him just being like, it's a prayer. It's always been a prayer. When you're scared, you should sing this. And I was just like, oh my God. Anyway, number 3 most important Disney composer of all time is a guy named Brian Transow. In case you aren't aware, BT composed over 26 original hours of music for Shanghai Disneyland in Shanghai, China, where his is the exclusive score of Tomorrowland. So BT is like, I've covered BT's music 1,000 times on my channels. I've had the opportunity to thank him for inventing the stutter edit. If you have ever heard a song that goes, that man invented it. So like the song Stutter by Joe, every time that song is played, BT just makes $1 zillion. My dear, you do not know me, but I know you very well. Anyway, 1990s hip hop aside. Let's jump a little bit further into the Haunted Mansion. I'm so excited because the attractions themselves are really the lifeblood of the experience. Now, one of the most magical things about a Haunted Mansion is that the Haunted Mansion is always in a different park in a different area in each park. Now, when Disney first opened the Haunted Mansion, they opened it in New Orleans Square in Disneyland in 1969. Of course, at the time, they couldn't have understood the connotation of saying that the ghosts of a plantation would come to haunt us forever. But I feel like it's one of the accidentally most woke things Disneyland ever did. Now, there's a couple of different levels about the unfortunate of that. Number one, the fact that Disneyland has always been like served best by its minority cultures, by the guests of Disneyland that are like, I come here to escape the hardness of the world. Black guests, Latino guests, Asian guests. There is always room for you in Disneyland, just like there's room for queer, gay and trans, bi, pan, everyone. Disneyland thrives on its differences, which is why something like New Orleans Square kind of has a secret magic to it, that these are the ghosts of a plantation house. The other thing is the Haunted Mansion opened the night of the Tate murders. So all of the signs all over Southern California said tonight the dead comes alive. And
How
Spoiler alert.
does that happen to them twice? If I had a nickel for every single time Disneyland opened an attraction the same night that a horrific crime happened in California, where the signage all over was just, I'd have 2 nickels at least.
I believe what Kevo is referring to is the night that Fantasmic was supposed to open. All of the billboards all over Southern California said, tonight, Southern California sets ablaze. And that night was the night of the Rodney King riots.
Oh my God.
It was the first Disneyland show to use
And thus
giant
Disney stopped
pyrotechnics.
using billboards forever.
Actually, they stopped using vague billboards, and every Disney billboard after that is a moving thing that says the name of the attraction. Like, seriously?
Wise executive.
Tonight, the Haunted Mansion attraction will be opening at the Disneyland Resort Park in
Nothing
California.
that happens in the world is related to this.
Spooky. So spooky. New Orleans Square, Disneyland, 1969.
And, you know, it's appropriative and it's problematic. It's also 1969. We all accept that, and we can feel how we feel about getting there. I think Haunted Mansion, the movie, is kind of the start of fixing it in terms of it is Black creators and Black actors that are the primary presence in a film about New Orleans culture and ghosts. And it's kind of a full circle moment. I think this is the start of something, not kind of the pinnacle of it, but I'm glad we're here now. And that was the first thing I noticed about the movie that I really loved.
And they're doing a lot with New Orleans Square right now, with the fact that they're changing over Splash Mountain into
Tiana's
Splashdown Jubilee, whatever
it looks
it's
so
called.
good.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I always love the Splash Mountain name, but hey, if this is giving us a Tiana's Palace restaurant where I can finally get Tiana's gumbo, I will change the name to anything you want it to. Please give her her due. Give her a whole land. And something I do really enjoy about New Orleans Square and Disneyland is Liberty Square is so generic in Disney World.
Yes.
But, this is taking a piece of culture that isn't in California and showcasing it. Where, then they also have California Adventure, which was just such a misfire because they were focusing way too much on presenting California
and
culture
not
to
adventure.
California. Yeah. And so that made it pretty cool.
The Liberty Square.
Fun.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to comment that there was one major sort of Black contribution to Haunted Mansion previous, which is the unfortunate Eddie Murphy movie.
Yeah.
Not unfortunate for any of the acting, because there is a phenomenal, very Black cast in that film. And while there is very little I would not do for a raw era Eddie Murphy in that red leather suit, good Christ. Oh my God. That was not Eddie Murphy being given room to be a Black man comfortable in telling the story of his people in a mansion that was used as a slave quarters. That was not Black Eddie Murphy getting to thrive in Dreamgirls. That was Disney Eddie Murphy showing us that he can do Nutty Professor again. And I really appreciate that Eddie Murphy was capable of giving family fare. There have been attempts to make the Black presence of Haunted Mansion felt previous to this. It's just not been given the credit and respect it needed during the creation process for that output to show that beautiful quality of Black culture and not just a beautiful quality of Black actor.
It's always going to be painful to get there. It's going to be awkward and ugly, and there's going to be a lot of missteps. And like I said, this film, I think, is not finally we've done it. It's finally we've taken the first real step in that, a Black creator made the film as opposed to the person who was supposed to make it, Guillermo del Toro, which I'm a little heartbroken about only insofar as
my favorite director of all time, and being a Latin man, getting to see my favorite attraction of all time made by my favorite director of all time. Sure, same.
Crimson Peak gets you. I mean, Crimson Peak is what he made instead. Crimson Peak is how he took his ideas and made the movie that he did not make for Disney. And you can see in Crimson Peak what we could have had in his vision for Haunted Mansion.
Go back to fucking fish. It makes me furious.
Yeah. So,
it's what he wants.
I'm glad Justin Simien did this film, and I'm glad that it has the cast that it has. I would just, Guillermo del Toro is a legend, and I would be very fascinated.
Anyone who needs to understand how to make a good horror film that is not a remotely horror film at all just needs to watch Kronos 50 times in a row, and you'll 1/3 understand that horror is humanity. I also just want to say we had the absolute, outright, outrageous pleasure of watching the cast and crew of Haunted Mansion on an episode of Celebrity Family Feud. We watch a lot of game shows on this show and in this family. And, congratulations to Steve Harvey on his nomination for game show host at the Emmys. He does a really good job of making everybody feel like they're just hanging out. And that's really cool. Justin Simeon. It was great to see him there representing as a gay man with his very handsome bald beardo husband. Hey, handsomes, what's up? And then they had the cast with them. They had Lakeith's mother, Lakeith being the lead in the film, and his stunt double / childhood best friend, like his visual double. So cool to have him there. And then Tiffany Haddish, Mary Lou Henner, who is doing a weird amount of press for this film, despite not really being in it, is incredible, in part because Mary Lou Henner, for those who don't know, has perfect autobiographical recall, which is a specific psychological condition where she can remember every day of her life to the date. And she's actually like a Mensa member, and she's a hyper genius. So it's just really cool that she chose to do Celebrity Family Feud and come out and raise money for charity.
Wait, is she in it?
Yes.
Yeah, this is her. Oh, in the movie? Yeah, she's one of the tourists.
She's the tourist in the beginning of the
yes.
movie. Yeah.
She's the other Carol.
Yes.
And that's even the thing, that she did
Carol is a very
this for
common
such a
name,
minor
okay.
role.
And
That's why Hot Beardo is his husband.
Yeah,
I really want to super chime in and agree on everything that you were saying about the thing of Haunted Mansion is so much the ghosts, and that's not to take away from the really fun and interesting human characters that they did create for this movie. A lot of the tourists were cute, like Mary Lou Henner's. Dan Levy and Winona Ryder were really funny, but barely in it, and it just felt like this weird balance of they couldn't figure out how to properly showcase great characters and performances that they did create originally for this, while also bringing in the elements of Haunted Mansion that are Haunted Mansion and were right there. It feels almost like they relied on, it'll just be there and you'll pick it up in the background. Like, no, it deserved more focus.
I think had we removed Owen Wilson, and I hate to say it, but Rosario Dawson, Chase Dillon is phenomenal. Chase Dillon is a perfect little kid to be in the Haunted Mansion.
And he was a charm on.
Yeah,
he and his mom were
fantastic.
amazing on this.
And, he was great with all of them. He was great with Rosario Dawson. He was great with Lakeith. The fact that he is looking for a father figure because he does not have one. The fact that he's kind of a lost kid. I mean, he's just so great. The movie should star him. And that part I would not leave behind. But if we had chucked Owen Wilson and kept Rosario Dawson as the mother, but maybe she's not in the house for whatever reason, that time they get so much screen time that could have gone to the ghosts. And it's
Can you imagine Owen Wilson's duelist against Luke Wilson's duelist? Can you imagine? I don't even necessarily think the Owen and Luke Wilson combo is necessary, but
only in Bottle Rocket.
I maybe always thought the Wilson brothers were jokes. Legitimately, I thought that they were both of them are unbelievably hot in their own way, but neither one of them is something I need. They're like a hot I can find at any bar. Not being dismissive, they're star quality. Whereas Dan Levy is kind of like the hot I can find at any gay bar, just to pick on someone I love so much. You know what I mean? But what they've really come to show me is their performance is of taste. They have a flavor that you can only have by having your nose broken 6 times. They have a flavor. The problem with Owen Wilson's character was something Kevo said to me in the movie theater. My absurdly hot husband just leans over to me in the movie theater, so I think it's about to get steamy. And he just goes, that reveal that he's not really a priest comes way too late in the movie.
My
and
God.
I'm it's so way too late in the movie.
Also, they're really can you believe it?
Yes, it was
I
choreographed.
can't believe it. I sort of assumed.
I can't believe you've been lying to me this long when I already guessed it an hour ago. That's
Mac
what I
is
can't
gay.
believe.
It's Mac is gay.
Yeah,
Oh, you're gay.
kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, we know you're gay.
Yeah,
You're
after
gay.
11, 14 seasons, sure, of course.
It was kind of like he was playing his Mobius character, which
Mhm.
was, I think, maybe my only
Should
real.
have just been Mobius.
I
Well,
actually
he
felt
should
like he could have been Mobius.
He could have been a ghost that was inhabiting a dude.
Thank you.
Just to get him there, and then he disappears because he can't sustain
And the
it.
ghost was a priest, and maybe that's where he goes.
And and then he's there. He's part of the movie. Thank you very much. Your 5 minutes of contribution will be so valuable to selling the film. And I felt the same way about Rosario Dawson. As I tweeted from the theater because I was in the back and my screen wasn't bothering anybody, the movie asks a very important question. Rosario Dawson's hair? And then answers it, which I was very impressed by.
Yes, I was very impressed with the answer, but it was way too long a question.
It was.
The question is Rosario Dawson's hair, and the answer is Dorothy Parker said so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that was the answer.
Yeah.
So it was just women everywhere, just absolutely being feminist icons for themselves. That hair alone is the Barbie movie.
Come on.
Okay. We got so excited about this project. Back to New Orleans Square for a minute. So New Orleans Square gives birth to Liberty Square, and something that maybe I think what sometimes people miss about the difference between these two visages is the entity of the manor at Liberty Square is a fearful enclave. Everything about it invites you in. Everything about it asks you to walk up and enter past the columns, stand behind the rail, be part of it. But look at the grimace on the body, on the countenance of encountering the geography, the topography of the Liberty Square haunted mansion. It wants you to stay back. Fuck you, because you're not magical. You will not survive this. It buffets you. It begs you to stay out. Whereas New Orleans Square says, come in, there's room for 1,000. Any volunteers? New Orleans Squares really tests your mettle and asks if you have the balls to walk up to this haunted structure. For me, Liberty Square wins.
It's a southern home. It is airy. It is open. The transition from inside to outside is supposed to be very smooth.
Great photo, Kevo.
Fantastic photo. Liberty Square is a Gothic mansion, which is likely going to be in a cold climate. It is stony. You're trapped inside, or you're outside and not going in. And it's sort of, while it really understands the assignment in terms of horror, it also feels very white European. We can see it in a lot of different places. And I think what really makes the Haunted Mansion special is when it embraces an aesthetic that is more diverse. It's not, I get exactly what you're saying, and I really do agree. It's just that I'm glad that the seed for all of this is New Orleans. And I'm glad the thing that we build on from there is New Orleans, because while Liberty Square really does understand the assignment very well, it's something that we as a culture have done many times before and will continue to do. And New Orleans really kind of invites us to be a little more broad about how we think about these things.
And I really appreciated the surprise appearance of the Liberty Square style as a surprise second haunted mansion,
Yeah.
while still being set in the New Orleans area, and how much of the film was centered around that culture, that geographical location, how many iconic shots of the area there were, even like the outer areas of New Orleans, because you see so many things that are set in like LA or New York, where you get to see beyond that, and even see like Staten or things, other boroughs of New York. And so getting to see, that
for me.
But getting to see that journey from inner New Orleans out to where the house was, all of that adding to the ambience was so cool. And exactly, I really agree, them continuing to focus on that instead of having this be a house that would then be so far removed.
Now,
And it's great that the characters that we get in particular in the other mansion are Winona Ryder and Dan Levy, because
famous
they are-
actor of the screen.
they are like the pinnacle of like the joke of white horror.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, they kill it in their roles. And like the house would not be in New Orleans. Like it should not exist there. It makes no sense. The whole joke works on like 8 different levels. It's a very Disney inside joke, but it's perfect for the movie. And I think it does justice to the particular house. I think it would be really funny to do some kind of sequel or some kind of follow-up that gave you the same house, but it wasn't in New Orleans.
Like the house just moves.
Oh, I thought recreation, but yeah, even that.
Yeah, you know, just for whatever reason, you could come up with a funny in canon reason, but like no matter what, that just like we're in this house, but we are not in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And to add to that, you know, there's a lot of things I want to say about the difference between the two attractions, but our world is littered with retcons,
Yeah.
right? And I sometimes retcon myself, right? When people ask how big I was probably 298 pounds for a grand total of 3 days. I hovered around 288 for like 4 years. But when people ask what I maxed out at, I say 300 because it sells the point better than 288. I retcon things about my life for the sake of simplicity. I'm a human being and I need to survive, okay? I'm not a building in a theme park. And one of the things that makes me ache inside, like it's so hard because like I say to you guys, to this beautiful audience that, you know, our numbers keep really saying that our audience cares about us. And that makes, I don't know, that makes me feel amazing, right? So thank you all for being the greatest fans. Like, subscribe, and follow all of you that do those things. Thank you so much. And everyone who might, thank you. And if you decide this isn't for you, you're fine too.
Thanks for stopping by.
Right? No, really.
Thanks for
still
coming
love
into our
you.
very haunted digital mansion.
Right?
And hopefully someday we'll change your mind.
But one of the things that I talk about is like the feeling of enculturation being a part of something it's unforgettable, right? And there's very few things in Disney parks that feel that unforgettable to be part of. There's very few that moment in time. But one of that moment in time was once a billion years ago. The Disney parks had this dream of creating this endless staircase that was constantly shifting. And they wanted it to be like an Escher painting, and they just couldn't afford it. And Wally Crump, one of the greatest Imagineers of all time, which if you don't know what an Imagineer is, think about someone trying to ascend to dominion status or to godhood, and but make them still have to have like a human body. That's an Imagineer. And I say that having gotten the pleasure of working with some of them, like Imagineers just walking up to you at work and being like, hey, what are you doing? Tell me your ideas. And just be like, you're too cool. Man, that Big Thunder Mountain break room. So the Imagineers did the best they could, and they came up with this very classic giant spider sequence, and they sold replicas of those giant spiders. They were so dumb. They were so haunted house at Six Flags. But eventually, Disney had the money to really sink in and do a beautiful revamp on both of the domestic haunted mansions, and they took out the best jump scares. Like, I love jump scares, actually. I know they're cheap, but nothing makes me like, I get a certain kind of excited. I have this really cool memory. It's so stupid, but like my best friend growing up with this amazing horror queen named Heather, who introduced me to Roman Dirge and Yonan Vasquez and all of these guys we're going to talk about later on that fill my heart with joy. And I used to say to Heather, you know what I really like? I like being surprised out of nowhere. And so sometimes when I wasn't looking, she would just hit me with a pillow really hard. And anyway, so the reason I bring this up, right? I love that feeling of like having the wind knocked out of you. I love that feeling of fear, of disorientation. And that's one of those things that staircase really gives. It gives that feeling of fear, of lost. And it's a really cool thing. And it's one of the only things that's unique to the Disney World experience. Oh God, there it is, Kevo. Great job. It's unique to the Disney World experience. It's not in the Disneyland experience. There's also a really haunted library that's really beautiful. That is the basis for every library in my head. Actually, always. The Disney World Haunted Mansion Library. That's my go-to library in my head. Just put like a bust of the Wayne family and you basically have my mental image of what all libraries should look like. Anyway, so not a lot of differences between the two parks. And then Tokyo's is an exact clone of classic Disney worlds. It has all the original jump scares. There's nothing different about it. But this is where I need these three to be a unique discussion, right? Disneyland in 2001, because Disneyland's guest count is 70% local and 30% tourist, whereas Walt Disney World's guest count is actually 90% tourism and 10% local. That means that Walt Disney World has less of a burden of creating new and unusual experiences. Disneyland is required to create more experiences that drive local guests back to the parks. To that end, Disneyland has up to 13 holiday offerings that are unique to the rest of the theme park. These include some really unbelievable international experiences like the Jingle Cruise. You will be hard pressed to get me on the Jungle Cruise most of the time, though they have worked really hard to make it like, look at how we were appropriative. They make fun of us. They being the people whose cruise this actually is, the locals, because they're no longer natives. The locals actually scam us. Like, because we're dumb white people, not because we're like appropriative, right? So they've worked really hard to make Jungle Cruise less upsetting. And they do an amazing job making it Christmas themed. The Jingle Cruise is one of my favorite things to do at the holidays, and nothing is better in this entire world than Haunted Holiday Mansion. Haunted Holiday Mansion in Disneyland is an experience like you've never seen. Dude, they literally replace every single item in the entire attraction with a Nightmare Before Christmas facsimile. Dude, we would literally get off the line and go up, walk right back on 6-7 times, man. It is. I waited 4.5 hours in line to meet Jack Skellington. As a little boy, they told me as a little kid I would grow up to be tall, and I just wanted to be the fat Jack Skellington. And like, there are few who can deny in what I do, I am the best. Like, I stand around in my kitchen making pizza, imitating Danny Elfman. We listened
So you're
to
the fit Jack Skellington.
Now I am, yeah. But like, we listened to Dead Man's Party as we were making pizza this afternoon, because like Danny Elfman means so much to me as a performer, as a writer, as a singer, as everything, man. The guy is like one of my top 5 heroes. I would never have thought I could be a composer if it weren't for Danny Elfman. And his score is so beautiful in this theme park attraction. And I've never had the honor. Tokyo Disney is like my actual number one dream destination in the world. I've explained this on the show many a time. Tokyo Disney Sea is my number one experience in the entire world that I dream of. And that there is a haunted mansion that is exactly the Disney World haunted mansion overlaid for Christmas. I just this idea that there's these parallel versions, and there's parallel Christmas versions. Anyone who knows what Christmas means to me, I start Christmas November 1st because Halloween starts August 31st. So I get 2 full months of Halloween. I get hot Halloween and then cool Halloween, and then I get hot Christmas and cool Christmas. Guys, this is seriously, my husband would literally ride a 6-hour plane ride to spend over 20 hours on lines with me in Disneyland just so I could experience everything Nightmare Before Christmas. We waited 45 minutes to meet Jack Skellington for 1 minute. Like, we waited 4.5 hours in Disney World in Christmas for me to meet Jack and Sally. We took over 100 photos in 30 seconds. I really love Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't talk about it a lot because it's been so hot topicked. But if you ask me if there's a perfect score of all time, it's Nightmare Before Christmas. And there is nothing for me in this world like Haunted Holiday Mansion. It's the best 15 minutes of my year. And to know that there's 2 parallel versions in my favorite attraction that mirror this thing. This is what Disney does that no one else can do. I have the Ultimate Universe and the 616 Universe running right parallel each other, and they do Christmas for me. Disney offers the ability to retcon an attraction and take out older parts and replace them with updates. So they took out the jump scares and put in beautiful digital editions, and that's amazing. But that now there's both versions for the Haunted Mansion, the updated and the original. There's just nothing like it. There's really nothing like it in the world. So you can, come for Disney all you want, but like, find me this anywhere else in the world, and I'll give anyone who wants to give Disney a hard time a pass.
I mean, the sheer brilliance of Nightmare Before Christmas as a concept I mean, it's an amazing movie, but like the marketing potential alone of associating Halloween and Christmas.
And even the little things you don't realize about that movie. Do you happen to remember who is the narrator of that film?
Is it Ron Howard?
It's Patrick fucking Stewart.
Is he the narrator of the film or the narrator of the soundtrack album?
Well,
He's the narrator
just
of the
that
film.
little. It's that little
Either
sequence
way.
right at the beginning,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. But yeah,
It's time you begun.
Yeah.
Everything about it. I mean, my favorite plush as a child was the mayor with turning head. Like, I can't talk about this movie because I get unattractive about it.
I mean, it's a phenomenal film, and like I said, the marketing potential of what you get, and this is the culmination of that. We already have a spooky ride set. We're good. Now we can pull in one of our most beloved properties, and our spooky ride is set for the holidays. That's brilliant. That's brilliant to just think about, for somebody to be like, hey, we've got the Nightmare Before Christmas. Why don't we Christmas our pre-existing nightmare? Is genius, and it's fun, and it's cute, and yeah, I mean, that there is the ability to pull this off in 2 different locations, just, by nature of the fact that there are 2 of them, is wonderful in and of itself.
And it's the fact that it is not money they have ever left on the table.
Yeah.
So often with these properties, you almost want to be like, the synergy is perfect. Why aren't they doing more? But it is one of their properties that they have always tried to make the most out of over the last 30 years. So
I think
really
we're
cool.
seeing that constantly with Marvel stuff. We say it to each other all the time. Like, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but we see so many things where the synergy potential is there. And I'm sure there are perfectly legitimate reasons why it doesn't happen, but it's just a bummer when you can see it and imagine the cool real life experience you could have based on the property that you know a bunch about and the real world potential of it.
I would like Disney to call me, because if they really need, the greatest fireworks show Disney ever produced in the history of the world is Hollow Wishes. And I am not willing to have a conversation about this.
That's okay. We're not going to.
But you really want to make marvelous wishes? Have Ant-Man shrink the castle using the projections. Have Ant-Man shrink It's a Small World using projections. Anybody who's ever been to Disney World, everything they do that's amazing on the castle, they can't do the same thing on Disneyland's castle. Because like the most beautiful chode you've ever seen in your life, it's kind of like short and fat, right? Instead of like big, long, and impressively tall.
I quit. I gotta leave. This
But
has been fun.
But It's a Small World in Disneyland is perhaps the most perfect surface to project on in the world. And every cool thing that you think when you go to Disneyland, oh, they don't do it as cool on their castle. No, they do it 50 times better than Disney World can do on their castle over on It's a Small World.
If this is Mount Everest, It's a Small World is Mount Rushmore with that broad, wide
I was going to say
surface.
the moon. Legitimately, I was going to say the moon. Like, you've never experienced anything until you've seen the holiday show on the Christmas decorations that It's a Small World. But so I just want to say that, like, the amount that they work to do sort of descriptive exploration of idea. And I think descriptive exploration of idea is something that I'm glad we're kind of doing this a little bit out of order, because, we can hit Hollow Wishes, we can hit Boo to You, and then move on to the 2 very unique ones. Hollow Wishes is gone, unfortunately. The Not So Scaries are very different nowadays. They retired Wishes as a program and have replaced it with the line of
back.
I was going to say the line of shows that have decorated the nighttime sky since, none of which have been successful like Wishes. Wishes did something that very few things can do, that I've hoped that we would get for Haunted Mansion. There's this moment in Wishes where they send just 2 perfect fireworks that look like stars. And it's the when you wish upon a star moment. And for what is, in my opinion, the greatest fireworks series of all time, the best moments are the individual private fireworks, the intimacy of light in the sky. And Hollow Wishes has these moments of fearful intimacy. You believe it's your fear And that they were able to simulate that in the sky is like, how do you make the sky privately fearful? And that's kind of the magic of a Disney attraction. And I just want to point out, I say a lot about things are iconography, things are iconographic, things matter. Hey, Kebo, would you please zoom in on the bottom of that bat for me?
Oh yeah, it's the hitchhiking ghost.
Who are the icons for the park? It's the hitchhiking ghosts. The idea that a ghost might follow you home, right? As a kid, I used to joke that the Haunted Mansion can't be that scary if every time you get on a ghost follows you home, then there can't be 999, can there? And a cast member said to me, yeah, well, that's just because you've never been one of the ones who doesn't leave to replace them.
That's a good cast.
Oh my God. That you are one of the 99 happy haunts when you enter the not so scary party. And I just want to say for a second, anybody who thinks that I think that Disney is financially affordable, Disney is a rich man's game only very frequently, which is ugly. The things we are talking about are not comfortably accessible by the average person, and they require such savings that an additional park ticket, you need a second ticket to go that night around Halloween, and it's another $140. I am talking about things that are cost prohibitive. So many of the experiences I've had aren't just because that I grew up with entitlement, which I certainly acknowledged at the beginning of this episode as a precursor to discussing this topic. But I did manage to work for the Walt Disney Company for 5 years, which in and of itself, affording to work for the Disney Company, like being a member of SAG-AFTRA or the WGA, certainly requires a lot of sacrifice. So just to remind everybody, this show is a part of the strike. We are on strike, just as Justin Simeon had to mourn promoting his dream film with such a limited amount of production. We mourn that Haunted Mansion is going to come in third this weekend due to that amount of production and that amount of advanced warning on this strike coming. So just a reminder, this is a strike show. This show is on strike. We are talking about media because these creators need their work talked about. It needs to be celebrated so Disney sees what they will lose if they lose Lakeith, Justin, Rosario, Tiffany. They need to know what they will lose when they lose these people. They would lose these 3 fans. So, show's on strike. Just a reminder.
And we don't get paid for any of this. We have no promotional deals with any studio, would not take
We
them.
are absolutely only here to promote the artists and their art and not any of the other, because they deserve to have our support and the support for the hard work they did and want to be shown.
Absolutely. So from Hollow Wishes, I just want to mention really quick, and then I want to get TK your opinion on how theme park attractions become part of the parades, become part of the fireworks. I want your take, and then Kevo, please, as the only person I know on this show who worked for the parks as much as me, I need your opinion as well. But what we need to say is, for a minute, if you want to know why I go to Disney World, I would trade a zillion Disney memories, a zillion, truly, because I have 10 zillion, and I would give them to as many people as I could. I would trade almost all of them, like Disney Wish, all you have to do is give me a wish kind of energy, to never have to give up the memory of those grave diggers. You've never seen anything like it. In the Mickey's Boo to You Halloween parade, starting all the way back in 95 and running to today, even though the parade has been dramatically transformed, people come out dressed as Haunted Mansion cast members. They come out dressed as ghost hosts. And there's a special shovel that interacts special with the ground. And there is a special dance they do where they throw sparks at the ground and like at guests. You're never going to get hurt. They're not that kind of spark. But they literally light up the ground. We're talking about an idea where they light up the sky. And these guys light up the ground because they're grave diggers.
And it's this impression that like elements of the Haunted Mansion have escaped.
Yes!
Here, there's this float with gravestones so that
Exactly,
Madame Leota can have a gravestone where she's following behind. The hitchhiking ghosts are back here.
And they
these are
actually
a
like
bunch of
chop and
people
lock.
that are waltzing from the dance scene. Yeah.
their makeup is photoreactive, so it actually interacts. You can actually see that the type of LED that's illuminating the buildings. I don't know how much of this is actually. I'm out of my NDA, no matter what. I don't know how much of this is super casual information, but you can see it's a special type of light that captures the paint on the building. That's actually photoreactive with the makeup. So, like, that's why nothing looks like this anywhere in the world, because it is all meant to look one of a kind. TK.
And back to something you said earlier, just by the way, for everybody, that is the type of thing that Imagineers think about. How to create an experience and then what you need to do on a logistical level. So you need to invent a paint and invent a light. You know, you have to create a new kind of light bulb, and then you're going to create makeup, and you're going to synergistically make all these things work together. Or sometimes you find them, perhaps, but that's the work, creating that kind of experience.
Now, what do you think about seeing this idea that the Haunted Mansion just breaks into the park and takes over for the night?
I mean, it makes a ton of sense, of course, that we have this holiday dedicated to spookiness and the macabre and ghosts, and, you know, not by default death, but, you know, kind of, you can
you can't avoid it. It's ghosts.
Right. Yeah, this is not something that I ever experienced in my Disney journey, so I don't have a ton on this one, but I absolutely see the appeal. I see the brilliance behind it. It's something that if I had the opportunity, and again, the funds, I would love to go be a part of. But I so appreciate the thought that goes into it, and, you know, the little details that you're talking about, that create the kind of memories that, you know, really you can't ever forget. That is the whole point, to create an experience that is so riveting that the memory of it is like its own film that you always carry with you. And that's always the magic of Disney in one way or another. So yeah.
That's why the 40th anniversary of Walt Disney World. No, wow. I'm 25th, 30th, 35th, 40th, 45th, and 50th all involved the phrase "remember the magic."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the icon. The magic is the icon. Now, Kevo, you know, when you first got into Disney, you were into Disney, right? But I was like, you got to be enculturated. It needs to be something that literally changes you on a cellular level. If you don't think in mouse, it's not going to work. And, you know, since then, you have gotten a vacation home and celebration and a primary residence in Golden Oaks. And to that end, how do you feel about this idea of, I asked you to become part of a culture, and that culture involves like literally recognizing one of 999 characters from a theme park attraction suddenly dancing in the street, and me being like, look, clap for that.
You know, it's something that used to be harder than it is now because of the age of social media that we are in, and that's something that is really cool. We follow so many different Disney Parks channels that present so many different forms of media having to do with the parks, whether it's historical, whether it's just show videos. And that's something that is really cool nowadays, that if you can't afford to necessarily go with the amount of regularity that we have been fortunate enough, there are still ways that you can seek out and find and enjoy these things, through video, through even just like the Wikipedia articles that there are, and just
Truly.
learning about the history, all the hard media that's released, like the album that you love, so many things.
And Kevo, you bring up such an interesting, it's an important point, and it's something that I never really thought about until I started hanging out with you guys, which is that all this stuff is available to view on YouTube, whether it is through people whose basically career it is to surreptitiously go to the park and video their experiences. Disney puts out a little bit of that type of stuff, but for the most part, it's a lot of amateur. And that's a whole universe unto itself of content worth checking out, again, only because a video like that allows you to stop and analyze those details, and sort of like reverse imagineer the experience and sort of think for yourself, how did this get done? Why did this get done? What was the appeal? What was the thought behind it?
I actually just want to highlight a couple of those that we love.
Please.
Expedition Theme Park, Fast Pass Facts, Disney Beat, Disney Food Blog. We really used to love Midway to Main Street, who was the hottest thick boy on the entire internet, and decided to kind of pull back on his content. But go back, that channel, Midway to Main Street. If you can handle a really handsome man, maybe being very aware that he is very handsome when he's talking to you, that channel is some of the best information you can get. He's just a little smarmy.
And what's funny too is you're not even saying the name that's usually at the top of the list, which is Martin Tributes. And you're not saying that because that's just something you know as a Disney person.
I literally, I was like, everybody knows Martin. Why would I say that? And you're absolutely right.
Everybody knows Martin. That is how well known this person is as a videographer and historian at an amateur level for Disney park stuff. Like since the beginning of YouTube, this person has been doing it, and it's become such an industry on itself and such a huge sphere of YouTube of itself.
And I have no clue who you're talking about, so it could go one way or the other for you, dear viewer.
Now, from the versions of the Haunted Mansion that are the Haunted Mansion to the only version that I will not hear slander about.
You already said that you won't hear slander about other versions, so let's just
shush.
Yeah. Well, that's Mystic Manor, and I do love Mystic Manor, but first I want to hit Phantom Manor. Phantom Manor is
What's Phantom Manor?
Phantom Manor should be
this one?
the one that looks like the Psycho House.
Yeah.
So Phantom Manor is part of an initiative that, like, you can say whatever you want about Disneyland Paris being a failure. It isn't. Euro Disney was a failure, but the company rebranded the entity. The problem was there was a man named Michael Eisner, and Michael Eisner did something no one had ever done before. He had taken a company that was literally so shattered it was about to be sold into 4 parts and turned it into the most powerful entertainment entity on the planet. People were literally coming up to him, calling him a god. Excuse me. And then people wondered why he thought he was a god. I don't know. It is a little bit that Ezra Miller syndrome when you have Grant Morrison whispering in your ear, "No, you really are the Flash." Like, at a certain point, Grant Morrison's ASMR in your ear is going to fuck with your brain, right? I do think there is an extent to which Michael Eisner's vision for Euro Disney made no sense. But one of the things it had was a belief in theming. They have unique areas nowhere else has. Instead of having a traditional Frontierland, they have Thunder Mesa, which tells a narrative story beginning to end. The town starts sad, kind of poor, and then strikes gold on Big Thunder Mountain and oil. And then the town becomes prosperous. And as you walk through Thunder Mesa, their Frontierland, you see saloon shows and high concept eateries. And it's a celebration of excellence, of excess. And then the man who struck gold and oil's daughter wanted to marry the wrong boy. And he lost his mind. And as you leave Thunder Mesa, it's a hellhole. And it is a ghost town. And it's an area that tells a narrative story. And you celebrate the wealth of the area in the 1860s over in Big Thunder. And in the 1880s, you watch their sad demise. And it has something nowhere else. And I have chills talking about it. You literally see a ghost version of the Frontierland you just walked in to get there. in Phantom Manor in place of this cemetery scene. You literally see the park above you reflected in its hell version directly below it. The level of theming there, the level of storytelling, a lot of things had to change from this, right? It was a little too hardcore. In fact, the two biggest bemoans I have are the original English narration for this was one of the final things that was recorded by the incredible Vincent Price. And it was removed actually for being English trash because the French were kind of surrender monkeys about it, but they got over it and it has since been restored. You can pick your English or French. Thank you to the Vincent Price Historical Society for being the people who kept that alive. The recordings were all lost, but Vincent Price's fans kept Disney Anya alive. That's the kind of dedication that a fandom deserves credit for doing the work that preserved my art for me. Thank you, Vincent Price fandom. The other thing is, as you went through Phantom Manor, the actual Phantom of the Manor became decrepit, and by the end, he was like literally rotting meat falling off of his face. And they decided that was just far too horrifying because of the number of children that were having like goddamn terror seizures as they got off the ride. And over the years, they removed the decrepit, rotting meat look. And now he just kind of looks like the basis for the Jared Leto character throughout, from the very beginning to the very end. But like sometimes TK will be like, Nico, what are we going to do as our next thing? You know, we've figured out how to tell stories about other stories together. What story do you want to tell uniquely together? And like, Phantom Manor, Thunder Mesa, Phantom Manor. Because I just think the idea that you can walk through an attraction series, like a series of rides that tell a theme park story, that's sort of like the dream of combining the idea of the docent with the idea of the audio narration at a museum, with the idea of the walkthrough experiential exhibit. It's sort of like, what if Sleep No More met Faith No More? I gotta go.
Nope. I hate you. But no, I mean, I get what you're talking about. Curated, lived experience of fiction.
Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you.
And that's impossible to pull off. Because one of the big things is it's very difficult to tell people you need to go here next, especially at a place like in any Disney park. I think it's one of the things that's holds the Harry Potter area back from being everything it could be.
That and transphobia.
I mean, there's something holding back Harry Potter entirely, and it is that. But the park experience, for all that it is lovely to go in and self-direct and, you know, go get a thing of butterbeer and then go on a roller coaster, whatever you want, go get a wand. The fact that they have the wand experience, and yet that is not necessarily the first thing you do. It was not the first thing we did. We went directly to the roller coaster.
Same.
It would work, especially because those are books. It would work a lot better to give people a story that they sort of can't skip. And I hear what you're saying about this particular version of the Haunted Mansion, in that what it does that kind of none of the others do is essentially give you a story that you can't really skip. And in a park where you can choose to just do that for one part of your day and then go do whatever you want for the other part of the day, the fact that within this building you're not going to do one thing and then the next, you're going to do it exactly how they have it mapped out for you, that's a uniquely risky proposition that when it pays off, blam.
The other place it plays out perfectly / pays off, I wasn't sure which one I was going to go with.
Yeah.
Is their Tomorrowland is literally themed to like Jules Verne.
Damn.
And dude, everything is this for Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
Their Space Mountain is themed to Victorian space exploration.
Of course it is. That's such a...
It's only okay, though.
To go further in this would then to start getting into talking about like the history of these countries and how
I'm ready.
Western imperialism has played into, like the first thing I thought when you were talking about the failure of Euro Disney and how we have Disneyland Paris now. No, I'm serious. The first thing I was thinking about is how when you first started showing me videos of Tokyo Disney Sea, one of the big things that I didn't really know about was the Oriental Landowning Company.
Oh, Oriental Land Company, man, that is the most unbelievable thing to even try to explain to somebody.
Yeah, and it is a huge entity in the creation and the curation of Tokyo Disney Sea. So that's a whole other set of brilliant minds that are not associated with the Walt Disney Company that
You
are
like
working
Kukla Arms? Thank the Oriental Land Company.
That's working in partnership, that's also paying licensing fees and royalties. And there isn't really the same type of thing in Disneyland Paris. There's not the same type of entity. And then there's also sort of, there's a lot of cultural questions about, how this all plays out. So anyway, it's a longer conversation. I think it'd be a cool one day. But I think it's really interesting to look at little pieces of that conversation when we look at just this one particular attraction and how it plays out both successfully and maybe other times not successfully, place to place in light of all of these factors.
And, to that end, Kevo, I want to ask you how you feel about the fact that the two most recently built haunted mansions, and I had to think about it, like haunted manors, because the last two built have used the word manor. It's Phantom Manor and Mystic Manor, and they're both international editions of the Haunted Mansion. And what's unique is while Phantom Manor is like ghosts, nothing but ghosts, Mystic Manor is Chinese in nature. And something that needs to be discussed is that Chinese, I want to say iconography, culture, historiography avoids ghosts. They have spirits, but they don't have ghosts.
They have a very different perspective on the whole ghost and spirit concept. It is a lot different from the Western concept.
So, Phantom Manor is actually just that there is a haunting by virtue of magic is bringing all of the artifacts in this themed home to life. It's a little bit more, what if an inventor / artist lost control of all of his things than it is a haunting with 999 happy haunts. For that in Asia, you kind of have to go, although it's similarly themed, to the Tower of Terror over in Disney Sea in the New York Harbor area. How do you feel that later editions of the Haunted Mansion worked so hard culturally appropriately to avoid the initial iteration of what made this attraction famous?
Well, I like that. I like it for the culture, but I also like it just for the variance of storytelling and of the concept. Something that struck me when you mentioned Seekers of the Weird and the way that it interacts with the Disney property is it made me think about what does C stand for again?
Oh God, yeah, Disney Sea. It's this idea,
Yeah.
SEA, and it's like Society of Explorers and Adventurers. And it's this idea that there is all throughout time been a pervasive group of adventurers who live like the Disney code, and it's all the attractions are bound through this group of secret society like Illuminati.
Pirates of the Caribbean and Jungle Cruise, and in fact there were things in the recent Jungle Cruise movie that
Yes, there were.
See as an organization, and not that it needs to be turned into any kind of MCU,
but it is.
Franchisization is lovely.
Ryan Reynolds is getting a C movie.
But anyway, I would really love to see something like that uniting the horror elements and perhaps even interacting with C as an organization.
Yes.
Whether they're two separate things that can cross over, whether they are part of the same organization. But there are these things that are already tied into Disney properties in a really interesting way. And, You know, one of my favorite dumb shows on the planet, Once Upon a Time, was something that really did a lot taking Disney properties, both the films and the attractions at times, and taking a lot of things from Disney canon and building some really cool stuff out of it. They have all these properties, they have all these concepts, and just the difference of all of these different mansions and manors, you know, whether it's one of them is a clone of another one, but other than that, they're all still pretty unique from each other. And I think, you know, TK, you even made that point of it would be cool if the one from the movie was a reproduction. That can be tied to this concept of this one is a reproduction of this one. And there's so many
Yeah.
things you can do with all of this canon that exists in so many very cool ways. And I think branching out into the manors, especially one being so horrific, one being so lighthearted and fun. One of the things for Mystic Manor is that the mascot of it is an adorable little monkey that you chase around, and he's so cute and, you know, so different from Phantom Manor, though. And so many different things you can do with this haunted house concept.
I cannot wait to talk about all of the things that Marvel did with this haunted house concept. But I think my big question for you guys, you know, myself included, what is it about the ability to step into a fearful place in the middle of magic that has captured the minds of so many people for going on 55 years?
You said the exact word, magic.
Yeah.
Horror always, there is a certain genre of horror that will always be connected to some form of magic.
Yeah.
There is a lot of magic that uses horror because, I mean, like even a show like The Magicians gets you to the concept of eldritch beings that are incomprehensible. Even the Beast in the first novel, which winds up being a much more kind of down-to-earth thing than you originally think.
Hello, I have extra fingers and I'm a cop on Desperate Housewives. Boop, boop, boop.
It is scary as shit when you first read about it, and it is a horror thing. And the first suggestion that they have is that it is an eldritch being, and that what they are all experiencing when they see the Beast is like one small piece of something incomprehensible. So there's always this weaving of horror and magic, and it is the thing I think that could unite all of these properties and maybe even other properties for further development of story, which is that
almost what if it's all the same ghost host?
Well, yeah, and you know they all follow the same rules. In the comics, you know, a lot of times they say like this ghost's magic is what is keeping us here.
Yeah.
Then you get to something like Seekers of the Weird, which is just, you know, a lot of, it's just this really quick story that has so much to do that it can't really tell you its rules, but it's artifact based magic. Like you don't know how or why, but there's ghosts, there's mummies, there's everything that you would see in a typical horror trope. But then there's also magic. There is, you know, devices, there's amulets, and it's all really cool. It's all really fun. But the tie that binds all this stuff together that makes ghosts possible is some degree of magic. And that's great when we're talking about that's great when we're talking about a narrative, but it's also the feeling that you have when you are in the park. This feeling of magic all around you, and not just the magic of like, you know, oh wow, they made this happen and I don't know how, but really the feeling that there is something magical in the air, and that would lead to all of the cool things you see. The first thing I would think of is Figment.
Hey, no, Disney Kingdom's Figment 5-issue miniseries is the
great.
only one that was so successful.
Yep.
It got a sequel, and its sequel is so significant because they said they did everything there was to do into Journey into Imagination.
Yep.
That the sequel is about Journey into your imagination, and Journey into the Imagination. The sequels are based on the sequel attractions. That's how good Disney Kingdom's Figment is.
So, Figment as an attraction feels really magical. I think it is the like default baseline for me. Like for a kid, you're like Figment, that's it.
You're
And then,
correct.
so when you're feeling that you would go explore what is ultimately kind of a darker side of magic in this one particular place in which it is safe, in which it is silly, in which it is reverent of the fact that we all die, but allows you to have a little bit of lighthearted fun with it. It makes total sense to me. And one of the things I was looking into is why Shanghai Disney does not have a haunted mansion.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not, because it is culturally not something that...
It's a taboo. It's like incest levels of taboo. Seriously, I'm not being dirty. Like legit.
And again, you can kind of see how the world works through the differences here, because Hong Kong does have an esque, and the reason
and it's
why
like the longest line they have next to their Ant-Man attraction. It is like a 2-hour wait every single day.
But the reason why it's Mystic Manor and not Haunted Manor is because it's not quite ghosts and death, but it is closer to that, because that is an area and that is a population where, the cultural taboos are a little bit different. Anyway, it's fascinating, but to me, it all comes down to magic.
And I must say, the videos that we've watched of Mystic Manor, we've been a little bit surprised for how adorable and sweet the monkey mascot is, how horrifying it can be, and how truly scary they do still make it. And I really love everything you're saying. I think of the painting and the phrase in Arcadia ego, and this idea of, even in paradise, there can be horror, and we love the safety of the Disney parks and what that represents, and the idea of that being a safe place where you can let yourself be afraid without having to be too afraid, without it having to go too far. For as scared as you get, you know that you're still in Disney, and it's still planet Earth. Bad things can even still happen in Disney, but not, quite the same.
I want to jump on that, and it's going to sound really silly and maybe a little too why I associate myself with the Haunted Mansion, but I was not a good-looking kid. And whether you're going to think I'm attractive now or not, it doesn't matter. But I was a weird-looking kid, and I was a weird-behaving kid, and I remember everybody being like, oh my God, did you just pick up whatever cool thing came out that week? But I was like, hey, but wouldn't it be cool if you checked out Mandalay's international release Empathy with me? I was weird. And I think about Jeff Buckley's sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk. And in a song called Everybody Here Wants You, he says, look, I know I don't look so good from a distance, but I'll tell you, I'm the one. And that's, I think, what I feel about Haunted Mansion. I know it doesn't look so good from the distance, whether you take that literally or figuratively, whether it's the artifice of a Walt Disney theme park selling you fear, or it's the ugliness of the outside and the magic of the inside. From the minute you walk into the Haunted Mansion, you're kind of different. Like, you do understand that, like, you've walked into a movie. It's magic. And all of my favorite experiences as a kid involved being scared. I don't know why. I love being scared. I do. I love horror. And even the things I love that aren't scary, I love fear. And not to make a weird parallel, but a lot of you do watch our every episode. So I want to say, for those of you who wonder why I didn't love the Hellfire Gala 2023, when I love horror, I love fear. There was nothing scary about the Hellfire Gala. It was a massacre. The Haunted Mansion is never a massacre. The Haunted Mansion is a celebration of why it's okay to be scared and why it grows you and why you're stronger for it. And that's kind of the idea behind every Disney scare, whether it's the Tower of Terror, the Haunted Mansion, or it's a terrifying experience with the Horned King in the Tokyo Disney greatest ever attraction, which I swear to God, if I could go back through time, we would go see that Horned King castle tour.
Or it's every single roller coaster, no matter what the
Beautiful.
theme, that, scares you when you get to the top and you're going down. There's a part of Disney, no matter what, there's a part of all amusement parks, but really Disney recognizes it, that fear and overcoming fear and then coming to the joy at the end of fear is like literally why you are there.
And that's how I feel about all of the Haunted Mansion in its many forms, whether it's the Lego set I bought as soon as it came. Actually, no. My mother, my sainted mother, she is a complicated lady, as is anyone's mom, but my mom is one of my best friends, and the minute she saw this existed, she bought me that Lego set and sent it, like, directly to me. She needed me to have it. She knew what it would mean to me. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that this series is. That's Fatty, by the way. When I said earlier that my favorite hitchhiking ghost is Fatty, that's Fatty in the middle there on the Precious Moments. Guys, Precious Moments.
They are Precious Moments figurines.
That's the definition of
Yeah.
adorable. And Haunted
God.
Mansion is a part of Precious Moments. Whether you're a Disney fan or you're a fan of fear or you're a fan of cute, there is room for you in this franchise. The bride is something we've all thought of, whether we've thought of our involvement in marriage or our exceptionality from marriage as a construct in the binary. The idea of being a bride, a groom, or not being either one is something we interact with, so we can recognize socially the construct that creates the bride. The duelist, whether we've ever been step 1 levels of ready to duel or not, we understand dueling. We understand a party. We understand death and sadness. It's a humongous part of the human experience, which the Disney parks rely on to tell their stories. I am so excited that we have about an hour more of this show for you guys, because what we've talked about so far fills me with joy, hope, and excitement for not just the nature of Disney as an entity, but the nature of us as fans. I have been so excited to do this episode with TK, and I mean Kevo for 500 years, but like Kevo was with me when I bought a set of blueprints from a warehouse that had questionably, I have them out, and I was so close to showing them on air. I'm not sure how legal they are for me to possess, so I'm not going to show my blueprints for the complete attraction of the Haunted Mansion. But safe to say, I have a complete set of 9 rooms of the 13 blueprints for the Haunted Mansion. This is truly, TK didn't overhype it. When you talk about things that define me in my fandom, this is up there with X-Men. I'm a horror fan because of this. And I can't wait to come back and talk about more spectacular, uneven delight. Of course, I can't wait to talk about more about the 999%. But until we're ready to talk about all those amazing ghosts, the movies, the comics, and more, check out these amazing commercials. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and more, because we have a ton of amazing content for you. And to everyone who checked out that recent drag race video, you're a hero.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys after this break.
This was a fairy tale style anime film that used Mario as like the pieces for it. And it's why we had, this wizard that looks like a penis. And it's why she couldn't possibly end up with Mario, because look at him. So instead we needed to have this weird Prince
Princess
looks like-
Bubblegum.
Thank you. I was literally about to say he looks like he's from the Candy Kingdom. You have weird stuff like Toad is a woman. You have Bowser.
You have the magic to turn into a teddy bear, but if I put you in a box when you're a teddy bear, I will be able to defeat you readily.
And who is
Girl.
this Miss Endless character? She
Yeah,
seems
that's-
like a nightmare. I
Yeah.
don't trust her.
No reason you
Whatever
should.
this is. This and now I'm seeing leg warmers, so I'm realizing, was this Flashdance? I don't even know.
I think he's just supposed to be like a ballerina, like a pretty ballerina girl.
And it's funny, like Toad is such a good example because this is so early on that we don't actually have an aesthetic standard for Mario stuff at this point.
So
That,
why
like,
not?
Yeah, because like it is just so few pixels that depict what any of these characters are, that if you decide like when they're fully drawn it's this, there's really nothing that says that's wrong. By the time you get to Super Mario Land, or Super Mario World I should say, it's clear enough that some decisions are starting to be made that you cannot change and that you can't deviate from so spectacularly, which is why the Saturday morning cartoon shows are very faithful and don't take the same type of liberties.
So, for me, the most exciting thing about getting to talk about this episode is getting to share my love of the Haunted Mansion with people that I love, right? One of the things we talk about a lot on this show is whether it's Kevo sharing Doctor Who, or TK sharing Splatoon, or you really love that one movie from 1989. Or it's me coming with Final Fantasy, as you can hear in the background. Something about the show is that we always bring our unique interests and unique loves to this program. I feel lucky that I get to share Haunted Mansion with people who love it or like it or are interested in knowing more. Whether or not you grew up with Haunted Mansion, this isn't so much like check off whether or not you knew these things. This is a crash course in anyone who wants to experience it. And one of the things that I definitely didn't know before I put in the time to understand this medium was that so many of the character designs for the Haunted Mansion would be used in other attractions over the years, like the Pirates of the Caribbean or the greatest. I'm literally, I won't fight you on it because this is such a personal choice, but like the single most important attraction ever designed in my lifetime, and it was designed well before my lifetime, is the Carousel of Progress. I have no use for any other attraction in the world. Carousel of Progress is literally a functional performance of the evolution of the human spirit, and it is the most performed piece of American theater ever. And you can go back and you can check out the beautiful 4-disc box set for the 1964 World's Fair, which has 4 different versions. Now, that 1964 World's Fair box set was actually a fan-circulated MP3 project that Disney loved so much, they just polished and released as is. So that's kind of a cool lesson as to how the Haunted Mansion can also have kind of a weird thing about that in its past. But before we get to that, I want to ask you guys, and then I'm going to roll into some of the media adaptations of the Haunted Mansion. But I want to know, what was your biggest surprise when you were getting into the Haunted Manse? What was like the thing where you were just like, oh, that's true? Diggity damn. And if not, I can roll right into the adaptations.
It was less that I was like, oh, that's true, and more that I did not stop ever and think about the breadth of backstory for all of the ghosts and the multiplicity of backstories from different creatives, such that, you kind of have options. And like Captain Gore is actually like 3 or 4 different characters coming together and coming apart in various incarnations and various pieces of Disney media, attractions, properties, and there's like moments like I'm still not quite sure who the seafaring...
Take me to the seal. Yeah, I thought it was Captain Gore.
I thought it might be Captain Gore, but there's like a couple other people there's a couple other ghosts in the lore of Haunted Mansion that it could have been.
Yeah.
And you could choose to do another movie and say it was one of those, and actually Captain Gore will be the villain of this next movie. So anyway, it's wild, and we're going to talk about it in a second when we get to some of the media, but I was like, oh yeah, she's the bride. She probably so I married an axe murderer, but like...
Oh, wait, but hold on.
Then, yeah.
Kevy.
What?
Who plays the bride in 3 of the attractions?
Anne from Buffy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Chanterelle?
Yeah, Chanterelle. Absolutely.
She's the face of the I do and I did. Like she is the face of the Disney World and Disneyland, and the now projected into Tokyo face of the bride in all of the bride standard editions.
She has some weird superlative related to the fact that she is on the 3rd season of Buffy and the last episode of Angel. Like she's like the most recurring, like the longest recurring guest star on Buffy.
Well, her and Harmony.
Yes. That's very cool. Yeah, I mean, like, so within the fact that there's so many characters, there's also stuff like this where like there's little bits of personal mythos for every single character too. And that's just cool. I mean, like, if you personally are like, I don't want to be scared, I feel you could look at this stuff from a distance and still just have a breadth of characters to play around with.
Now, Kevo, I mean, perfect.
I think it's the fact that, it is such an iconic attraction, and there are so many iconic attractions, but you don't really think about them having, like, Small World doesn't have a backstory. Space Mountain...
Thank God.
Doesn't really have a backstory. There's theming, but there isn't really a backstory. Big Thunder Mountain, they occasionally try to surface levels of backstory there, but it's a lot less focused on. There was a lot less attention and enthusiasm put behind them, whereas this is something that everyone tends to have a kind of excitement about, whether it's people that are working on it, so many guests, people who aren't even normally drawn to horror find something enjoyable about Haunted Mansion because you can make it so cute and safe at times, and it can lean either more horrific or just fun and happy haunts. And I think the fact that it can have such broad appeal is something I'd never really thought about.
Well, speaking of that broad appeal, Disney definitely saw that broad appeal, and they have been trying to work to adapt the Haunted Mansion into a number of projects over the years. And I was actually most surprised at perhaps the project that never got made, because the project that never got made was one of the most unbelievably surprising things in the history of fandom. So way back in like 1990, 1991, a group of fans sent a script to Disney for the Haunted Mansion based on the characters in the attraction. At that point, in 1991, it's only Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Tokyo Disney. And they write this script, and it's led predominantly by a guy named Jim Hill. And they send it to Disney just to show Disney that people care about the Haunted Mansion, not to get a movie produced, not to get their movie produced. And Disney loved it so much, they bought it. The only reason they didn't make it was because Hocus Pocus kind of bombed. And they just weren't sure about another Disney horror for kids right after a horror movie bombed. And then I can't imagine like Marvel being like, and I just said that, and then I just realized one of my personal heroes and good friend of the show, Jason Lowe, actually had the exact same thing happen to him. He wrote a fan comic about Multiple Man, posted it on the internet, and like C.B. Cebulski reached out to him, be like, "This is so good, you're going to be at Marvel, so don't worry." And now he gets titles. So I can't think of too many people who are such big fans their show gets produced. And, this coming as close as you possibly can without seeing the light of day. How do you guys feel about the Haunted Mansion making room for one of its fans as kind of like one of the 999 happy haunts?
Out of curiosity, did you Google Jim Hill at all?
I didn't. I was just happy this exists.
Okay, Teak.
He has a website called Jim Hill Media. And the big headline regarding Haunted, and like there's a few things that are about his experience, but the most recent one is a PC Haunted Mansion. Now that's scary.
I'm glad they didn't make it, and 1992 is different.
That's just funny. It's fun. It's not to be like, why did you bring it up? It's, again, yes, 1992, fantastic. This headline is from like 2008, so people's politics change. 1992 was like towards the very end of you pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, you write a spec script, you send it to Gene Roddenberry, and he says you're a great actor, and you end up making Battlestar Galactica. If you do that now, the writer will, the owner of the property will shut down all communication with you, stab their own eyes out, so legally they can say they couldn't ever have seen your script, and no ideas.
You will be arrested.
Nobody does spec scripts outside of specifically fanfic.
Outside of being asked to do one, and then it's not spec.
Right, and then it's not spec anymore. It's sadly kind of a lost thing, because it really was so many people's stories. And I remember, as I was even in college, and I was in a dramatic writing program, and then I did screenwriting for a long time. It was at that point even understood, probably don't do a spec script, but you were learning that from teachers who did and made their success off of it. And these literally were just fans who wrote what we now call fanfic, but you could send it in with some modicum of hope that it would get made. And, I look at that and I see somebody's, for whatever reason, untaken, Disney didn't take it up, an untaken journey on that kind of writing a spec script, writing a fan script and sending it in. I would be curious to see it. It's probably not that good.
Now, Kevo, you got your start in fanfic and in, the general interaction with fandom. One of the things that I've long bemoaned is the idea that anybody thinks writing isn't for them. Now, I'm a writer, and I think I'm a good writer. I think I'm a talented writer. I've been lucky enough to be a part of some really special projects. And I think you're really talented too as my partner. But one of the things that I really think is necessary is acknowledging into the world that anybody can write. It's language, and anybody can use language. Now, whether or not that language is worth celebrating is a question. But how do you feel about the fact that there was once upon a time that the Disney company was eager for your fan fiction to become part of their canon?
I mean, it's not just Disney, it's Hollywood. But yeah, it was a weird time. It was a very weird time. It's why when you watch old stuff, like really old stuff, like 60s bandstand stuff, and you see the way these people dance and how homely they were, and you're like, how did these people get on television? They're not even synchronized. Like,
The one good thing I've ever seen in any episode of Three's Company is John Ritter's testicle.
but it just feels so strange to see television today compared to how you could just basically walk on to Hollywood and get jobs back in the day. I was delivering sandwiches and I pitched an idea and now I run the network.
It's something we've talked about a lot lately. We've been doing a Friends rewatch because, we're shaped by the things that influence us. And the next thing we're doing is probably an Empty Nest rewatch because, I don't know, growing up, I just thought I would be Richard Mulligan. And
hey, there's still time.
God bless, man. Dreyfus is the second greatest dog in history. So I tied behind Bucky and Judy. So I think about the fact that as a kid, I never appreciated what an actual very handsome man David Schwimmer was. I never appreciated what an unbelievable amount he put behind his performance. I also never knew that Elliot Gould was supposed to be a sex symbol and cannot see it. And I'm famous for being grandpa makes me horny, but Elliot Gould, it does not happen. And something that I think that you're really touching on and what you're talking about is the transformation of identity about what makes magic, what makes television exciting. You've told me a little bit about when you'll flip on Freevee, because something I've brought to your world is a love of Frasier. And I've been really proud of making you a Frasier fan. And you talking to me about like flipping through Freevee or, the Freevee-esque channels and seeing Cheers and how it's a different universe watching episodes of Cheers sometimes from watching episodes of Frasier, from watching episodes of Modern Family, from watching episodes of something as revolutionary a TV show as Abbott Elementary. And so to hear you talk about the way you feel that Jim Hill's script era Haunted Mansion Hollywood is a different creature than per se the 2003, the 2010, 2014, 2017, 2021, and 2023 worlds that saw Haunted Mansion releases, it reminds me the nature of the ghosts themselves and the depth of their age, the idea that these ghosts should be running several hundred years. Now, I mean, honestly, am I a big Eddie Murphy fan? No. Do I think Eddie Murphy is a very talented man who, actual end of the day, I remember seeing Dreamgirls in theaters with my then boyfriend and him turning to me and going, "Can you believe Beyonce in this?" And me literally waving my hand at him and being like, "Did you see Eddie Murphy?" That's a man who was a joke for 20 years, giving the performance of a career. And so when I think about Eddie Murphy, I think about Eddie Murphy Raw. I'm 8 years old watching that in my bedroom and being like, I don't know, but this is funny. And I think about The Nutty Professor, and whether you were 15, 55, or 100, you were laughing in that theater. And I think about the ways that, you're talking about different generations of film. I think 2003's The Haunted Mansion suffered from being the era of the star vehicle. It's almost like they treated this Haunted Mansion like a doom buggy. It was just meant to carry Eddie Murphy to success. It's not that it wasn't a strong script. It's not that it wasn't a strong idea. It's that it rested on Eddie Murphy. And Eddie Murphy is many things. And we've seen him be an entire film, but he's not an entire film about the Haunted Mansion. I know we didn't spend too much time celebrating this film, but did anybody have any particular thoughts about how the world reacted to this that was a thunk compared to how the world reacted to, say, Pirates of the Caribbean celebrating Johnny Depp?
First off, you got to acknowledge that this was written by the man who wrote Elf.
What?
Yes. then he also wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles. So
No, I need to be clear that Elf as a script changed Hollywood forever. Elf is why it's cool for me to like Christmas again. I don't like Elf, but I owe Elf everything for making me literally crying at Christmas movies okay. So that's crazy. Thank you. That's Nightmare Before Christmas.
the director was an animator on The Little Mermaid, The Brave Little Toaster, and his first film was The Black Cauldron.
Wait, this guy worked for Ron Musker?
He co-directed The Lion King, Stuart Little. He fully directed Stuart Little 2. This is a solid
Wow.
leadership team.
Ron Musker is like literally one of those names in animation where like if you're in animation, you hear Ron Musker and you get like chills. Wow.
And
You guys remember when I sobbed watching Adam Shankman on RuPaul?
Yes.
It's that.
So, and just to add a little spice to the whole thing, this director, who got his start on The Black Cauldron, is a minor character in Real Housewives of Beverly Hills because his wife is one of them. And she
The guy who wrote Elf was supposed to write a sequel to Mrs. Doubtfire, but it got canceled when Robin Williams died.
So, like...
God, Robin Williams opposite Eddie Murphy could have made this movie fucking
And this
perfect.
writer has had such a hard career since Elf with Haunted Mansion and then the movie Zoom and Spiderwick and the George Lucas failure Strange Magic.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
So, like, he has this amazing hit, and then I think, based on everything we're seeing from this leadership team, I think everybody thinks this is a hit. This is absolutely supposed to come out as a hit. And
you guys are making me like this even more.
I'm really frustrated that we didn't take the time to watch it before this episode, because I really feel like I would have a much different perception now 20 years later than I would have had at the time. Probably a much kinder one.
I mean, I can tell you because I did watch it. It's just not good. It's just not good.
I saw it in theaters. The night it came out. I brought 9 people with me.
You apologize to all of them.
This was the hardest I came out for a film since Rent, when I brought 17 people with me.
Jesus. Wait, this was way before Rent, but I hear you.
Oh yeah, it was.
Not too far, only 2 years.
Not too far, but it was before
Rent was the last time I ever organized a giant group outing, and then Kevo got me to go to one for Harry Potter 7. And
you didn't show up. You liar.
My last one was Big Fish, and it was me and like 5 different heterosexual couples, and all the men in the theater were crying, and all of the girls were like, "You guys are dumb," and I realize now they are correct, but I do have issues with my father, so
have you ever seen Big Fish the musical?
No.
Oh, it's actually perfect.
Well, I believe it because anyway, there's no way that a lot of people didn't think this was going to be a great film. And I guess it's really possible that somewhere in there it was. I don't know if it was executive leadership clashing with creative leadership. I don't know if we just weren't in a place for it.
Probably that. I think that the Disney Renaissance had sort of reached a peak that we had gotten over, and unless you were something exciting and cool like Pirates of the Caribbean, like what I'll definitely say is this probably wasn't cool. I kind of just hope that it's fun and at least on par or better than like a Wonderful World of Disney movie, but I think they were hoping it would be a blockbuster. But like, the era of the Flintstones being treated like a blockbuster had pretty much passed.
And I think this does think it's one of those. I think you've nailed that.
Hold on, though. Why did we all turn on Rosie O'Donnell pre 9/11? You can't melt steel beams. I never understood that. She and Billy Joel together recorded the best version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas this side of Tori Amos having a space orgasm. And I just never understood where, like, because on topic, that the Flintstones, that, what were the Addams Family?
Halle Berry. Oh, yeah,
Brady
that
Bunch,
generation, Brady Bunch, that
yeah.
generation of we're 90s-ifying everything.
Yeah.
I feel like certain people got associated with that era.
Yeah.
We turned on Rosie O'Donnell because she represented 1997, regardless of the fact that in 2000 she was not yet the villain, although
I think
she
we
definitely had a
also-
dark turn.
Real talk, I think we also turned on her because culturally we knew she was a lesbian.
And she wasn't one of those soft, friendly lesbians
No.
with the soft features. She
No.
was one of those, and I know she's not a lesbian, but Time Daily lesbians.
Oh God, let's get into your Project Runway coverage.
God, I'll never stop talking about how much I love Tyne Daly as a leader of all lesbian women when she's not a lesbian.
Yeah, so this movie also, regardless of the many other things that make it not work, does fail in the same way that the current movie fails, which is that it chooses not to make use of the 999 amazing potential characters that are available to hang out with you in this film.
And I can't wait to move on to that film. I just want to say that, like, I wasn't actually rambling. Like, part of why I brought up that why did we turn on Rosie O'Donnell? I think this was the start of turning on Eddie Murphy. In terms of, I don't know that I can point to where Pluto Nash is in his timeline. This was really a point at which the whole world went, oh, that's the Nutty Professor guy. Fuck him.
And the clumps. And
I felt very much like this was a point at which everybody just said it was not cool to like Rosie O'Donnell. It was not cool to like Eddie Murphy. It was not cool to like Lucy Lawless, who...
You know what?
Oh, please, by all means. I was going to say Lucy Lawless, who, like, anybody who doesn't understand why she is a Kate Mulgrew, why she is a Patrick Stewart, why she is such a unique thing in Hollywood. She was treated like garbage for this unique role she played that serviced such a unique fan community. And she did her time in fan favorite, critical acclaimed works like Veronica Mars, like her, literally Lifetime Achievement Award earning Battlestar Galactica turn. And I feel like people like Eddie Murphy were made to do Dreamgirls to earn your respect back. People like Lucy Lawless were made to do Battlestar Galactica to earn your respect back when they were always doing the assignment. Kevo, I see you are eager to chime in.
I did look it up. It's Pluto Nash was about a year before this movie, and I really can't help wondering if this movie would have done better if Pluto Nash had come after.
Yeah.
Pluto Nash was really a huge
the
turning
brand
point for his
then
career.
is dumb for kids guy, and we're not, I think you're right. Like he buys himself back with Dreamgirls, and Lucy Lawless,
Jimmy got soul is like the best
such a
moment
tight
of any
turnaround,
film
though, because Dreamgirls was only 3 years after Haunted Mansion.
Dude, he deserved 3 Oscars for that movie. Truly.
It's sort of
That's
like
all
he
it
came back
takes.
with that, and then was like, and I'm taking a big step back
And
because I don't want to fuck up again.
And he had a
also,
huge personal drama where
I
he
was
was the
gonna
father
say-
of Mel B's child, claimed
Yeah.
he never even met her and had like fathered her child.
Yeah.
I really do. I just want to say, like, one more time, like, we talk a lot about performances of a lifetime on this show. Like, if you want to record a ray of light when you're Madonna, if you want to record Scarlett's Walk when you're Tori Amos, Eddie Murphy had his turn in Dreamgirls, which, like, not only is Dreamgirls a perfect example of how you can adapt a Broadway production in a way that everybody visualized 20, 30 years earlier, but Eddie Murphy doesn't do the stage performance. He cannot be held, like, I don't know. I don't mean to be coming out so in defense of Eddie Murphy, a known, at times, homophobic person,
No,
transphobic
we're talking about
person.
his career and the successes of his career.
Well, he's made so many apologies for those statements for that era of his life. I'm not like trying to be like Eddie Murphy's biggest fan, but anyone who wants to come for any of the acting, Haunted Mansion 2023, or Muppet Haunted Mansion, or even Once Upon a Time. The problem with Once Upon a Time was never the quality of the acting. I truly believe the produced Haunted Mansion specials represent people who have been on that attraction. Like, you don't understand. It's literally been like, seriously, 300 million people have ridden the Haunted Mansion.
The
And so there's
Memento Mori here got me.
Gosh.
By the way, you know who Madame Leota is in the Eddie Murphy?
Oh, it's Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah.
Stop.
never
Really?
I will never forget being in the theater.
I
So
just watched her episode of Cheers.
Oh my god.
When I was like 17, I used to say that there is a woman that, like, if I met on the street, I would proposition for sex, and it's Jennifer Tilly.
Christ,
And-
cracker,
Random.
Nico.
We're in the movie theater, and my then boyfriend turns to me and goes, "Go ahead, proposition the screen for sex," and dogged me about it, because people know that famous story. I've told it on the show 100 times. My sister made fun of me for not punching Adam Duritz in the face the one time I met him. Because I always said, after I saw a really very unplugged performance from Counting Crows in which my mother fell asleep, I would punch him in the face if I ever met him. Jokingly, just being silly. And my sister, when I happened to meet Adam Duritz sitting next to my sister, was like, "Go ahead, punch him." And I dined on this story. I Bob Iger at the Friars Club on this story for about 10 years. And so my boyfriend antagonized me about this for a really, really long time. But yeah, Jennifer Tilly. I'm in love with Jennifer Tilly. I actually think she's no shit. I think she's actually like Joey Lauren Adams, incredible actress.
I mean, they both shut the fuck up about their voices. They
Exactly
bang
what I
as
mean.
Actors.
They are literally held back by their
Yeah.
uniqueness.
Yeah.
But if you strip away what makes Jennifer Tilly a unique actress and just focus on her talent, she's not Meryl Streep or anything, but she's Judi Dench, man. There's a reason she's Oscar nominated. It's her and Mira Sorvino. Like, there's this generation of women that were both too pretty, too breasted, and too fashionably understood to be taken seriously as actresses. The only reason Lisa Kudrow ever beat it is because she's socially weird.
But really sharp. She knew what to do with it. I also want to say, like, I could get into it with the producers, the two primary producers of this movie, but they really have so many successes and failures that what I think is this was a crapshoot. They threw the dice and this just failed. It just did not come together. I do think that you could throw the dice on this film if it was about the ghosts, and it would have a much better chance of being successful. But, you know...
Kevy, these are amazing screenshots.
They truly are. What are these from?
They're from
This is from
Sorry, Kevy, by all means.
Mickey's House of Villains, which was a Halloween special they did for the animated series Mickey's House of Mouse.
Okay.
Which was just like basically a Disney nightclub where characters just came and hung out,
I love it.
and they would show really, really old Disney shorts, and they would use these bookend animated sequences that were only half the episode to showcase the many different Disney characters.
Can you get them on video or anything?
A lot of them are streaming on Disney Plus directly.
Damn.
I
Okay,
watched
cool.
this one for Halloween like 5 or 6 years ago, I think. It was cute.
Can I just say, you included Big Pete in an image there, and I think Big Pete is like an actual necessary element in discussing Disney fear. So thank you for including him. Bullies that could make us understand fear as a part of the storytelling as defeatable bad guys really paved the way for something like House of Villains. So that was a really great grab.
I think something that really hurt the Haunted Mansion film as well is that I often talk about how we lived in the children's entertainment boom, where we were there for the creation of Fox Kids, of the Disney Afternoon, of so many things. And I think our generation had grown out of that by this point, and now we were starting to see the emerging tween and younger teen markets.
Yeah.
And this was when they were still trying to just push children's entertainment as a general idea.
Yep.
Great
And
catch.
while it wasn't like the Flintstones or Addams Family, where there was like, it straight up should have been rated R at certain points for how sexual the Flintstones got and how inappropriate. I think this film still at times kind of pushed that line of, from what I'm aware, there were things about the bride and stuff like that. There wasn't really anything that was too heavy for general audiences other than being scary.
Yeah.
in this haunted mansion. There was nothing overtly sexual. There was nothing overtly graphic or gross. It was mostly just scary at times.
Plus, you're exactly right. It was never overtly sexual. It was like sensual in a way that wasn't accessible. Like, it was never sexual. It was never like enticing. It was always like, this guy remembered longing for a woman who looked just like her. Never sexual, but like, yeah, it just never
The
worked.
great films of the 90s and early 2000s were all ages in a way where the joke could be really inappropriate, but everybody felt confident kids didn't get it.
Yes.
So adults at the theater would sit there and laugh. Kids wouldn't get it, but they're fine for the whole movie, and the adults aren't like, I'm pulling them out because they got this like dirty joke. You made a great example with the Flintstones, which really
Truly.
had that. Brady Bunch had it. There were so many jokes in the Brady Bunch that I didn't get when it first came out that I now get. There's even enough of that in the Disney kids movies, Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin, that on top of the music and the spectacle, they're all really enjoyable. This fails to pull off any of that and really kind of markets itself as a children's film for a generation of children that want something different than this, and a bunch of adults who don't, I think, see this as being like the great films of the era. Anyway, I mean, long story short, I'd completely forgotten about this, even like up until the moment when I saw the entry on the script for today. Or like, Nico, you asked me about it at some point, but like, I knew we were doing the Haunted Mansion. I knew I was going to see the film. I knew Muppets Haunted Mansion. I knew some of the games, and I just completely forgot this existed until somebody had to make me aware of it.
It starred a black man who defined attractive blackness in the 80s. Of course, I was aware of it.
Very fair.
Speaking of things, of course, I'm aware of, I just want to comment briefly on the unproduced Haunted Mansion animated special from 2014 meant to celebrate the anniversary of the attraction. Now, this was originally meant to be produced by animator Grizz Grimley, who turns out I've loved his work, never knew his name before this, but was really glad to wiki spiral down on him with additional material by Scott Peterson and Josh Pruitt. Who were, of course, the masterminds behind later seasons of Phineas and Ferb. Yeah, they were the guys who stepped in when Povermeyer needed a little time away. This was meant to be a celebration of literally everything Haunted Mansion, but the idea of the adaptation toward Disney Plus is something that I'm looking forward to talking about, whether it's in tomorrow's episode about Secret Invasion or just over the course of the evolution of Disney Plus. When you look at the unfocus that led into this era of WandaVision, and there's that moment where WandaVision is perfect, you can see where something like this, with this stylized identity, with this uniqueness, led to a world where something like a Disney Plus felt comfortable producing something as specified as WandaVision. I can only dream that someday when we get Vision Quest, it echoes the strength of the performance that those two actors gave in that first miniseries. And if these stark images, I did a bit of research, this is evidently very Grizz Grimley. If this were to be realized, I think we'd be living in a different era. I think we'd be living in a world where everybody talks about that one Disney Plus special that changed everything, where the Haunted Mansion became their personal definition of fear. There is something that echoes the sharp visuality of Baku in my, all-time favorite animated series, Samurai Jack, or it echoes the stark reality and contrast of the reanimation of DuckTales in the reboot. This could have been, it could have been. Like, I feel the same way. If you told me there was a world that Sean Colvin's A Few Small Repairs didn't define an era of instrumental game in, this is that for animated specials. I just really think when you look at this image, you see everything it could have been. And I don't know if it's just because I expect to see a three-eyed woman burning it all down, but What do you guys think about this? I mean, I'm ready to talk Dark Victory, The Long Halloween, and When in Rome when I look at this. How do you guys feel when you look at this piece of art and think this was meant to symbolize 45 years of terror for over 100 million people?
I mean, you just see how stylized it is. Like the lengthening of the Haunted Mansion that we know in the real world, the physical property. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. These spires around it that I assume are trees, but look like a claw reaching up from the ground, a demonic claw reaching up from the ground to kind of hold the whole thing. We have so little detail except for some architecture in the world and the coloring, and it says so much about the intention. It feels definitely like a loss, and it's pretty crazy to look at one frame and be like, I can imagine everything we did not get.
It's like seeing a photo of a marriage you might have had to someone you've ever seen in your entire life and feeling like it's like Mike Carey writing Cannonball and Serafina. That's what I feel from looking at this. Kevo, this is like that idea of Penny from The Writer's Tale for you. The companion who never was, just by name, and all of the beautiful things you've imagined that you've talked about. Like, what would it have been? Would we have still gotten Midnight? Would we have still gotten Partners in Crime? How do you feel?
I feel like it's also putting so much pressure on this concept.
Wow,
Putting
what an
so
amazing
much pressure on the
perspective.
idea. Because the way you asked the question, I was like, oh my God, that is so intense and so much pressure to put on one special. It's something I said to you right before the movie last night. I leaned over to you and I was like, we really need to stop putting so much pressure on every single movie and then what's next?
Yeah, you really
need
that
to
helped so
stop-
much when I saw it.
And we need to stop looking at the entertainment industry as a race to $1 billion and to who's going to make more and more money.
That
I
relaxed
think
me so much at the beginning of the film.
the real focus that we should have is something being a success unto itself, making back its money and making a good enough profit, and then deciding what you want to do, especially with something that is such a long-lived property, that has been used so many times, that has had so many adaptations. I don't want to view this Justin Simeon movie as like the chance of Haunted Mansion. No, it's going to and should get 50 million chances because it's such a versatile property, because there's so much you can do with it, because it is such a Disney flagship idea. And, this is beautiful. But I even wonder if being the Haunted Mansion animated anniversary special and putting that pressure on it is part of why we ended up not getting it in the end, because then it came and went and then they were like, okay, never mind.
What a great perspective,
this-
Kevy.
Any Halloween, Thank you.
Wow. Okay. You know what? Yeah. And I'm now ready to move on. I genuinely thought this would be the entirety of my discussion. But I'm happy to wow. Okay. Maybe I did, when I looked at this, saw the potential of 60 years of Haunted Mansion progressing for, it's, God damn it. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Everybody should lay off of Phil Spector. Nothing that happened with Epic Mickey is his fault. TK, I saw those eyes. Oh, Phil Spector. I see what I said there. Phil Spector is a murderer. I met the guy who made Epic Mickey. What's his name, Spector?
What's
I know
his
who you're
name,
talking about.
Spectre? Classic.
Mark Spector. Moon Knight
No,
made Epic Mickey.
Yeah.
The guy who made Epic Mickey. Everybody was like...
Warren
Spector. Thank you so much. Warren Spector, when he made Epic Mickey, everybody was like, he made this dystopian nightmare and it's garbage. But actually, it's, I don't know.
Amazing.
I genuinely regretted that the Wii game I got did not have the truly repulsive designs that were in all of those early press releases. I think Kevo looks like Dumbo. He's got big ears and blue eyes and a pronounced nose and the sweetest smile you've ever seen. And I actually think TK kind of acts like Donald Duck when he gets real angry.
Which I didn't appreciate until I started playing Illusion Island.
Right, and so like I genuinely think it's the sweetest thing in the world.
The world also treats me like Donald Duck, which you will
Yes.
get when you start playing Illusion Island.
And so I think what I'm trying to say is the idea of bastardizing and horrifying into these characters is abject horror to me. These are characters that represent the men that I love, that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. That's my boyfriend and my husband in, descending order there. And like, I'm going to be with these men until I'm 200. And like, cause we're not going to live that long. And so the idea of deforming these characters makes me feel sick. And yet Epic Mickey is maybe the video game that I love more than Kingdom Hearts. And like, I don't think you can really hold accountable all the dreams you have that don't get fulfilled when you look at a piece of concept art.
We also, for some reason, don't really have language when it comes to cult followings in video games. Your two options are it did well or it was a failure for all time.
I'm going to build an altar to Midnight Suns because that game didn't... I can't have this conversation as a human man for the rest of my life. Midnight Suns did not fail. It got across the board 9.5s.
Yeah. And made money, and it just maybe isn't going to get 5 sequels.
And it's not going to get a fucking Rockstar Game of the Year seal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and does not need one. Epic Mickey is a cult following game. It is a beloved game. I think you are probably, as a gamer, missing out if you haven't given it a try. I can understand if you give it a try and it's not for you.
Kevin, do you have access to your magical paintbrush or no? I have the limited edition. I bought the most expensive special edition of this game you could buy. It was like $250, and it came with a limited edition paintbrush.
Yeah, Wiimote. I'm coming.
No, so anyway, I mean, Epic Mickey, phenomenal game. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's a Wiimote, or it is like a holder.
Yeah,
for
it's
a
a
Wiimote?
Wii.
It's a
No,
Wiimote.
It's a Wiimote.
It's a full-on adapter, and it plays the game.
Damn dog. That's phenomenal. Makes me think of the other amazing paintbrush game that was at first hugely problematic, and then they released that thing for the Wii U, so the fine motor controls. Okami. Anyway.
Oh my god, Okami was so fucking fun.
Yeah. But it did need the motion plus. Yeah, I mean, man, Kevo, you made a phenomenal point, and it kind of really makes me rethink a bunch of Haunted Mansion stuff.
Okay, I also want to say one other thing.
Please.
We talked about Muppets Mayhem on this show and how Muppets Mayhem was the first time we felt that the Muppets really found their way into modern audiences outside of the really, truly underappreciated Muppets 30 Rock that had come out just a few years earlier. Muppets Haunted Mansion is more horror than any other version of Haunted Mansion. There is a decrepit version of Gonzo that is truly sickening to look at. Like, truly. The decrepit version of Gonzo, the only other time I have felt that betrayed by a visualization of a childhood entity was Nimrod melting Iceman in the Hellfire Gala 2023, which remains somehow the moment I am most responsible for. I was like, we have to really take that Omega homosexual down a peg. Thanks for listening to that one, Jerry Duggan. I thought that the Muppet Haunted Mansion I can't believe that's the one he listened to. I thought the Muppet Haunted Mansion, Kevo, you said it at the time. Your reaction to this was so powerful, so palpable. You said this felt to you like maybe the first time you had seen the Muppets go somewhere as adult as Jim had seen them be when he designed them in his mind.
And yet time.
It forced the Haunted Mansion into an adulthood it wasn't ready for. It's that moment where Joey Lawrence sees that woman do those splits at the MTV Beach House on the wet t-shirt competition.
Yes, you have brought this up before.
He's just not ready to be that adult, and yet now he is. And Alex Kurtzman is just sitting there going...
When you say the Muppets weren't ready, what are the consequences? What happened?
We're forced to think of the Muppets as adults. We're no longer thinking of them as just simple Muppets with goals and expectations at the end of a road, but rather we're thinking of them as Muppets with consequential expectations as adults. Gonzo doesn't simply have a fear of failing in this situational aspect as though he would in any situational comedy, but rather he has a fear of failing as a creature, a fear of death, a fear of failing as a living entity, which surpasses the expectation of a Muppet being hit by a car flying 70 feet in the air and landing. His humanity defines him in a way that surpasses the quality of his felt.
But my question is, does it make the movie or the special not work?
No, it made the special so powerful. It made me think about characters in a way I never had before. And that was the nature of my question for Kevo. Kevo, the thing that I remember was this was the first like Haunted Mansion property where you were like, no, I'm the bigger fan, because you felt specifically like this highlighted Muppet strengths and downplayed Muppet weaknesses. And I would love to know how you feel all said and done 2 years after the fact.
I mean, it's another one where I wish we'd had time to watch it because I haven't seen it now in 2 years. And I was very sleepy when we watched it, to be honest. I very much remember being very, very sleepy. I think that was when I was sick that year. That year I was sick for a month.
Also, this one came out peak pandemic.
Yeah, we were all living the fever dream of we will never see people again. Okay, this is what we have. Disney Plus is our friend.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the production on it as well, there's this falls in that window of there were so many things produced where you're like, people are standing weird. People aren't in the same shot.
They're in the green screen I'm in right now. They're filming it in the corner of their bedroom. I completely, that's a great point.
It is one person with 50 Muppets so that the one person can be the one person not wearing a mask, and all the Muppeteers are clearly wearing probably full face shields. And
they're in beekeeper outfits.
And then just doing the ADR later for the full voice. Yeah. It was such a wonderful combination of properties. And especially because of the park experience they had going for a few years, they still have Muppet Mobile Lab, which is this rolling cart that has a mechanically moving Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker that are really amazing because they are free moving and very cool. But more than that, they had an amazing experience in Liberty Square, of all places, for several years, where the Muppets would appear several times a day in some of the street windows in Liberty Square and enact famous moments in history. And they really have put the Muppets to such good use in the parks. So seeing this synergy of the Muppets with the Haunted Mansion, such a fun property to combine them with. And, I feel like this got some tepid reactions at the time. Like a lot of Muppet stuff has been getting kind of tepid reactions, but it really is important to say it's from Muppet people. Kirk Thatcher and Bill Beretta were two of the huge creative forces in this. Kirk Thatcher being the director, Bill Beretta being one of the writers, who is one of the most longest-serving Henson writers. Yeah, Bill Beretta has done a ton of Muppet stuff over the years. I'm just now seeing on his filmography that he is actually Bobo the Bear of all of the Muppets. I know.
The Ed Asner of Muppets, when you literally have Ed Asner on this sheet. For anybody who doesn't know, Ed Asner played Lou Grant on Mary Tyler Moore, and Bobo the Bear is basically what if Lou Grant was actually a bear.
He's done Rolf, he's done Dr. Teeth, he's done Pepe Le Prawn, a lot of different stuff. And so these are people who know Muppets. So if you're frustrated at all that it didn't feel, it is the classic Muppet people. So I don't know what to say for anyone who might have had negative opinions about it in that direction. I'd love to see more things from them in this vein. Muppet Carousel of Progress would be fascinating.
Muppets tons of musicals would be great. Like Muppet Sweeney Todd, I've made the joke, I lost my right fin is completing a yay! And then, Miss Piggy comes in, wait, what's a rush, what's a hurry? Because she would play Mrs. Lovett. I would love that. But, I don't know why they're not using the Muppets for stuff like casting them in musicals.
There was that dream project of the Great Movie Ride featuring the Muppets. that
Beautiful
never got
reference,
to be.
Kevin.
So many things. But yeah.
I also just want to say that I might not be his biggest fan in any capacity, but I sort of feel like there is no failed musical in the last 20 years that if you just didn't put Darren Criss in, it wouldn't be 30 times better. I am no great fan of his. I don't think he is the answer to Michael Crawford being a curmudgeon or
No.
Sarah Brightman being Sarah Brightman. But I do think that Darren Criss represents an unbelievable, phenomenal talent that takes the identity musically of a Panic at the Disco sort of Fall Out Boy vocalist with the quality of a Broadway star. And using Darren Criss in something like this really said that they weren't just trying to make Muppets Haunted Mansion a Muppet project and a Haunted Mansion project, but there was an intent to make it taken seriously. And that's something that to segue to Once Upon a Time, I only wish that Once Upon a Time had the opportunity to use Madame Leota, one of the greatest magic mediums in the history of Disney, on a Mad Madam Mim level that she just really deserved in the era that people thought the show was still a hit. Kevy, nobody can speak more to the Muppets or to Once Upon a Time than you. So I'd love to turn the mic over to you.
I need to respond to this one first, though, because I had seen clips of him interacting with Kermit before this. This is an actor who interacts with Muppets so well, and that's something that isn't always easy. But when you get actors that do, Taraji P. Henson was another one. There is a classic clip of her interacting with Cookie Monster, insisting that she's the real Cookie Monster. And when you have actors that can play off of Muppets so well, it's really cool to see. I'm going to make you fall in love with Darren Criss if it's the last thing that I ever do. I don't think he's here to save us all. I just love him.
It's tough for me because I was raised in an era where, I think about people who give that performance. And I know that performance doesn't always come from that person. The best performance I've ever seen in my entire life, I mean the literal best minute of acting I've ever seen in my entire life, is Read Me the Signs, Tell Me My Fortune from Sarah Michelle Gellar in the season 1 finale of Buffy. But the second best bit of acting I've ever seen in my entire life is I Have to Get My Shit Together from Michael Cera in the 4th season of Arrested Development. And I am no fan of Michael Cera's. So I understand that great performance, and the third greatest performance of all time is, bar none, Gene Kelly in Singing in the Rain, realizing that he is talentless, sitting in the audience. Anyway, I really am willing to see somebody be special. And that's, I think, why Darren Criss, is an actor that I have no great affection for or great affinity for, appearing in the Muppet Haunted Mansion didn't really throw me off the way I had maybe anticipated. I'm so used to saying Muppet Caper or Muppet Christmas Carol. I had to be like Muppet Haunted Mansion. But to that end, I want to touch on Once Upon a Time. I have seen every episode of Once Upon a Time. Am I a Once Upon a Time fan? Yes.
Parts of it.
But it's really that if you ask me, who do I wish I could be? We all make mistakes, but I wish I could atone for my mistakes the way Hook atones for his mistakes.
You wish you were Zelina, I know.
I'm
It's
sorry.
a little funny.
I famously hate Zelina more than any other character on the show. She literally ruins every minute of screen time for me.
Well, we like her in season 7, and that's that.
Yeah, in season 7, she's hysterical. But so Hook is a really spectacular character, and he is portrayed with a level of social dexterity that is reserved for God, that is such a hard thing to say. That is reserved for Chuck Bass. That's a tough sentence to say because Chuck Bass is a nightmare. And I'm referring to the character from Gossip Girl, of course. But
Go piss, girl.
Go piss, girl. But season 7 of Once Upon a Time, it's actually kind of a tough thing to talk about because Once Upon a Time was the best intention of Disney is an experience. And it was an effort to make it accessible to everyone. The failures of Once Upon a Time are the failures of ABC as a network that we're going to get more into when we talk about Secret Invasion. But the successes of Once Upon a Time are the successes of a creative team who loves an entity more than they love the show they're making. I genuinely believe the creators of Once Upon a Time were more respectful of Disney than their own canon, to the point where they were willing to bend over backward to make things work without offending fans. I am certainly not here to say that Once Upon a Time is the greatest TV show ever made, but I am ready to say that Once Upon a Time treated all of its source material with a respect saved for to Sir with love than I have seen from the Perry Mason remake, or I have seen from Velma. And in an era where Perry Mason, where Velma are the standard, that Once Upon a Time took the effort to make one of my all-time favorite fictional characters, Leota, feel Shakespearean, feel Falstaffian in the level of respect. That's something that not a lot of shows are willing to do for characters, even when they're Typhoid Mary over on Iron Fist. And there's a lot of mistakes made by Once Upon a Time that I'm willing to talk about in 100 podcasts, as well as their 10,000 successes. But you will not say that the inclusion of Leota and the treatment of her as a character is a mistake in front of me. Sorry about it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton more. That it is unfortunate that it's a rough season. Because
Oh my God! Did you Once Upon a Time?
What?
Did you do Once Upon
No,
a Time?
we didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no
no,
idea
we
that you
didn't
did
know
Once Upon a
I've
Time.
seen the
That's
whole
so
thing.
great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I am a Killian. I have Killian earrings all over the house. I have a Killian cosplay.
I know.
I
that
am obsessed with Killian.
Well, I know you have a pirate thing. I get it. I do
It's
not
actually
feel the
only
same
because
way
of
about
Killian.
Hook that you do. So I will say that I don't think you are a Killian. But if you feel that way about yourself, I would love to learn.
Love, I'm here to make everything better.
I think he is a total cheese dick, and I do not think you are one. So But you'll listen.
Here's a huge part of why Nico is not fully a Killian.
Yeah, please.
Killian is too much of a sub.
Yeah.
Killian is too much of a sub. Killian
Yep.
at his best is Emma's service top.
Yep.
He is
But that
Killian's
dick
relationship with Emma is the epitome of she is Barbie and he is just Ken.
Yep. Thank you.
That
Okay.
is when Killian is at his best, is when he
Yep.
is just being Ken.
Nailed it.
True
You know what?
Killian.
Actual
Whereas
perspective,
whereas
as a Barbie,
Detective Rogers is a very different character.
Right.
as a Barbie,
What,
it is
Barbie?
really nice to be Ken every now and then.
I feel what you're saying, and I'm sure we will talk about this more, and you will give me some perspective, and I will see where some of your hook comes from.
Well, now we're definitely doing Once Upon a Time content.
There you go.
10,000%, Kevy. That's the only reason I brought it up so hard. That is why it's on this list. I never thought I would care about Once Upon a Time.
I
and
have wonderful things to say about how terrible season 7 is.
Well,
I'm
hold on.
Merlin.
I'm
a Merlin through and through.
You want to
Whoops,
know
I
who is
fucked
the...
up.
Hold on. I fell in love with Jennifer Morrison because she was on House.
Oh,
and
God.
I was ready to
No,
quit
we
House.
are too far off topic. And we
Hold
have not
on.
even-
No. It's actually, we're on topic.
It's not.
And I was ready to quit House when they introduced my actual favorite TV character of all time, like up there with Brie Vandekamp. Cutthroat Bitch is the best television character in the history of television. Like, actually, bar none. And if you've ever been somebody in a competitive industry, you've known Cutthroat Bitch, and she's made you literally want to die. And that is the best television performance and best television character ever. And then she's on The Magicians. And Kevy gets me to watch The Magicians with her. He's basically like, oh, did you know Cutthroat Bitch is on The Magicians? So I watched The Magicians. This character, this actress, this sort of world of performers, it's all super duper connected. And so, like, you actually kind of can't watch a Once Upon a Time without coming across 10 people you love from Breaking Bad and
Oh
Lost
yeah.
and The Magicians. And so I only think it's fair that we cover the Once Upon a Time Magicians Lost sort of confluence, because there's a real magical symmetry to this world of incredible performers. Kevo, you recently said that you weren't going to watch the Branagh Perrault films, but you were convinced by the fact that Michelle Yeoh and, you know, none other than Liz Lemon herself, Tina Fey, is going to be in one, and how exciting that is. And honestly, to bring it back just a little bit, that's how I felt about Taraji P. Henson being in the Muppet Haunted Mansion special, or one of the ways that I didn't know I would eventually be inclined to rewatch Once Upon a Time years after quitting was my all-time favorite television actor was in it. Sure, he's terrible in it, but my all-time favorite television actor is Giancarlo Esposito. I think Gus Fring is the single greatest live-action performance ever recorded in history. It is literally said like 6,000 times on this show. It's the most afraid I've ever been in my life is looking at Gus Fring, because he is literally the murdering rapist, drug dealer in every neighborhood, in every city in America.
You know,
And his performance on this is terrible, but it's that thing that if you don't give Once Upon a Time a chance, there's so many incredible performers you're missing.
and it's interesting because what you're saying is so true, but the difference is where Once Upon a Time is a soap opera through and
Great
through.
catch.
So that's where you end up getting dozens and dozens and dozens of actors that you've seen in a million different things. And some are celebrities, and some are Alan Dale, who, if you want to qualify as a celebrity, you can. He's certainly worked a lot. But Muppets, you have like celebrities. That's why I keep going back to this cast. And, you know, some of them, I love the way these two images are split, especially because it's like these are the ones that work really well with Muppets. And these are celebrities.
Although, side note, if Yvette Nicole Brown wants to replace Will Arnett every other week on Lego Master, I don't know how you built that, but I'm in for it. Oh, Jesus. I'm in.
I don't know why she
I would
doesn't
love
have
that.
one of these Domino Masters or Cake Masters. Oh, she was the narrator host on that stupid summer Disney Parks challenge that I
What a
love.
great
Yes.
catch,
Oh my
Kevo.
God.
And you know what?
Yes.
Yvette Nicole Brown is one of those people who she could have literally played the Tiffany Haddish role, or the Rosario Dawson role, or the Lakeith role, or
Yes.
frankly the Owen Wilson role. She could have been, I'm a preacher, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that something like a Haunted Mansion draws to itself is a performer of dexterity. I think that one of the things that's so interesting is like maybe one of the reasons that Haunted Mansion has had so much trouble performing to its expectations is films like Night at the Museum have performed beyond expectation, where you are
Yeah.
doing a 99 Happy Haunts movie. How is there room for the original 99 Happy Haunts movie to thrive?
Yeah. Hugely
Now-
similar concepts.
I need to push us to the comics because they are one of my most favoriteest things in the world. Now, TK, I'm going to turn those over to you for a moment and step away. But TK, do you want to give any background on I Feel Sick, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, Lenore, Filler Bunny, the SLG lineup, which I guess includes gargoyles, but that is the most foreign thing.
I was gonna
to
say
me.
it's I don't think that's true. It is true, but it just the Gargoyles book is such a straightforward, serial episodic comic book that it does not feel real in comparison to what we normally associate with SLG. Nico mentioned some of the greats. The two biggest that probably anybody who doesn't know them already would be Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Yonan Vasquez, who of course did Invader Zim, and Lenore, who makes an appearance in the Haunted Mansion SLG comics. And just the style for SLG is black and white, is very all I can say is stylized. It's very dark. It's very of the time, which these characters, Yonan Vasquez as a creator was popular in the early 2000s and the late 90s, and ultimately is a problematic creator, so I won't spend too much time on him. All I will say is I did not think I was correct when I heard that it was SLG. I thought maybe there were 2 SLGs. I thought maybe there was like some
Sweet
business...
little graphic company.
Yeah, I thought, because I didn't really know as much about Amaze Inc. And I sort of thought like, anyway, I just thought there was no way that Disney would allow the people that produced Lenore and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac to also...
I have a Filler Bunny doll somewhere right over there.
To also produce a series of Haunted Mansion comics. And yet, everybody who works on the comics gets it at a level that nobody else does. The Haunted Mansion
Dan
comics...
Vado. It's Jennifer De La Guzman. It's like these people.
So for one thing, anthology in terms of, it's a bunch of creators. It's a bunch of writers and a bunch of artists. And they mostly are telling the stories of the ghosts. Some of them are one-offs. Some of them continue book to book. There is not really a through line story of like, this guy shows up at the mansion. Can he stay the night?
Actually, there is a through line story. You must be playing Fueled by Ramen soundtracks.
Yeah, you are me
to this.
on amphetamines in 2001.
You are me experiencing some very fun Percocet experiences. Yeah.
And yet somehow I miss these. This is like my era for SLG, and yet somehow I probably knew about them, and I thought, fuck the Haunted Mansion, because I was dumb. I was a dumb kid.
You were a kid who thought that Disney represented the man, and not just the man, but this idea of enculturated entity that could not possibly service horror fans in their needs. And I really understand that.
And, partially I was right, but that's why there's collaborations. Anyway, if you can find this, it is art. It is a phenomenal anthology. It is such a good introduction to
it's what I tricked you into this with.
No, I mean, I was pretty deep into the work when I got to this. I had no idea this was going to be good.
It was so good. Oh my God.
I had this collected because you asked. But I had all of it, and I had rewatched the Eddie Murphy movie at that point. I'd done a bunch of the reading. This was late. Like, I was already like, okay,
wow.
This is worth our doing the episode. But really, I cannot recommend specifically the SLG Haunted Mansion, whether you get individual issues or a trade.
Well, there's 2 trades. I just want to specify. If you get Welcome Foolish Mortals, there's 9 stories total missing. And all of the stories missing are published in Disney Press The Haunted Mansion anthology comic. So the only one missing from the 7 issues released between those 2 books is Lenore Goes to the Haunted Mansion, which, if you don't know who Lenore is, so you don't know who Filler Bunny is, and you don't know who Ragamuffin is, I don't, like, it's so funny. Like, every now and then somebody will be like, yeah, I know Kevin Smith films, and I'll be like, okay. Do you know that somebody has sex with a corpse's with Joey Lauren Adams at the end of Clerks? Or do you know?
No, it's not Joey Lauren Adams. It's
thank you. It's yeah.
I forget her name. She has not been in much since, but it is like the one
woman who's in one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you are, it's that thing.
Do you know about the original ending where Dante gets shot at the end of Clerks?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yes.
Right. And that's what it's at.
Lenore is essentially like baby comic strip Rob Zombie. She is the living dead girl, but she is like a girl.
Oh my God. Her as a guest judge on Dragula is
100%. I mean, her as like a theme. Yeah, I mean, it would be so good. And yes, she does cross over into this story, which I thought was just so brilliant and such a
best story.
Such a get for SLG. I think It would be a get for Disney to put her in the Haunted Mansion at some point.
Could you imagine a Lenore platformer made
Yeah.
by Disney?
Oh,
Like
100%.
a Lenore platformer where she could summon Johnny as a special ability. I don't know.
After Illusion Island, I mean, I really can see a lot for Haunted Mansion, but
If I can comment on one thing that you said that I don't really want to weigh in on, I'm
What?
not here to talk about Jonan Vasquez as a problematic creator. I am here to talk about, for a moment, that we talk about that moment where Billy Corgan said that Lollapalooza in 1994 was the freaks got to own everything. Invader Zim was the moment that subculture became so cool.
Yep.
And we are forever grateful to Invader Zim for the advancements it made in shows like Phineas and Ferb. But to that end, even Jonan Vasquez has said he is a problematic creator who should be ignored at times. And it's humbling because, like, you think about a guy like Trent Reznor who got clean and sober and is so fucking trend out of his mind now. It's insane.
I mean, that was starting at the Fragile, big man.
Well, but I mean, in general, he transformed from this, troubling persona,
this little nasty
to
monster man,
a better person.
Yeah.
And you think about maybe people like Billy Corgan who continue to go on conservative radio and say they are problematic. I'm not here to weigh Jonan Vasquez's contributions to animation and comics, because Johnny the Homicidal Maniac actually created some problems. And I do wonder just how many situations for which Foster's The People Pumped Up Kicks is a response. But I do want to say that the contributions made by SLG, Invader Zim, that generation of animators and comic artists, it's hard to overstate the ways that counterculture, hackers of the world unite, kind of influenced all of us, and the ability for this haunted mansion to exist with a priest pretending to be a priest who's actually just a con man. So much of what SLG represented as a 90s and actually late 80s, but certainly well off my radar at that point, counterculture is what the Haunted Mansion thrives on. So certainly I am not here to celebrate the actions of a guy like Jonan Vasquez, but I am here to celebrate the sort of counterculture elevated by the efforts of a company like SLG.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think, we were all so random in 2001 and
random.
And like, that just got really brought into the public consciousness by works like this. And it's so worth your time to read something that feels like zine art.
Wow. What a great terminology.
For a Disney property. This is telling you the story of amusement park characters that people spend hundreds to thousands of dollars to get to be able to see. This is telling you their backstory in line art, black and white, simple, and yet sometimes not simple and so beautiful, but still not colored, not produced.
Just to actually, that specific thing, I actually had a note that so much of like the Roman dirge art, so much of the Dan Vado art, although Dan Vado, I don't think actually contributes any art. He's all writing to this.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I highlighted in my notes was that I was specifically surprised by, even in the first issue, that D.W. Fryendall's art on the new groundskeeper bordered on a level of musculature and definition that I think is often reserved for Jossman. Like the level of, look at the ripples in his musculature. There are points in this that represent high levels of art that are so important that like guys like Marvel, DC, Image would pay top dollar for. And they're hidden between stories like Talking Heads by Black Olive, which, if you think I'm being derogatory, you're missing what I'm saying. The cartoonish simplicity of a Talking Heads belies why Dilbert became a common household name, to the point where now we have to forever pretend its creator doesn't exist. But I need to say one thing about Disney Comics before we move on. there is an 8th issue of The Haunted Mansion by SLG Amaze Inc., which has never been published. Now, that 8th issue featured Preaching to the Choir by Cory Doctorow. The Doctor is In by John Bean Hastings, and the conclusion to The History of the Manse Part 2, written by Dan Vado and drawn by Drew Rausch. But there was a story that was credited as unknown, a ghost story by Jennifer de Guzman, who would go on to become the social manager for all things SLG for 8 years before she would move on to the same position at Image Comics, where she would have an incredible tenure and still continues in the comic industry today. We should always be celebrating women in comics because they have it 9 times harder to be taken 1/3 as seriously.
And I've got a great one coming up, so.
And this story was illustrated by the incredible Brian Bellew, who would go on to submit dozens of stories to this company and at least 8 stories to Haunted Mansion. But even on the Haunted Mansion fan wikia, it is listed as her story for the 8th unpublished and final issue is unknown in name. However, I did a lot of research for this episode. Really, truly, as TK and Kevo said at the top of the episode, this is a passion project for me. And I am really excited to Jennifer de Guzman, who is currently still on Twitter and working in the comics industry. I am such a fan of yours and so impressed, not just by the fact that you exist in comics as a woman and a minority, which there is no room in the entirety of media for any of us as a queer man and a Latin man. I really am so grateful. I could really prove that like I take you seriously. And I found that your story, which was previously credited as Untitled, actually has the name of Rest in Peace. So those of you who are fans of The Haunted Mansion and still watching this and fans of that 8-issue series from SLG and Amaze Inc., this is the first time in like the entire internet that anyone is giving the unbelievable CEO at not CEO, but CEO level, executive level of SLG Amaze Inc. her final credit in Haunted Mansion, which was never given. It was called Rest in Peace. I found this through her live journal where she bragged about getting to write this story. And I am only sad that she didn't get to brag about this story to the whole world once it was published. So in sort of the great legacy of phenomenal females blazing the trail in comics like Wheezy and Ann Nesenti and Lila Sturges and now Jennifer de Guzman, I just want to say it is such a pleasure and such an honor to historianize something you wrote that was never given the chance and the respect it deserved. Haunted Mansions, issue number 8 from SLG Amaze Inc., never published final story whose name was never known previously. It was, in fact, Rest in Peace by Jennifer de Guzman and Brian Berlew, and it should have come out in issue 8. So I'm just so excited. Like, it's so stupid.
No, that's amazing. And like, you know, for everything that you said, to be a woman in comics, to be a woman in this corner of comics,
Truly.
to be a woman in the, you know, pre-MySpace, so random group of people, you know, that it was the converging of punk scenes, of rave scenes, of...
so many of these creators are listed on Wikipedia under goth culture.
Yep. You know, yeah, because really they were so influenced by previous goth culture and went on to influence the goths that came later, including like the resurgence of the culture that has happened over the last 5 years.
I never could have gotten weird sexual experiences at local goth clubs if it weren't for these creators creating a world for me to go to.
So this is just truly phenomenal, so worth your time, and it's actually going to give you the best group of backstories about the ghosts, which is, you know, the thing I've been saying this whole time. The ghosts are the value here. There's 999 of them. Some of them are really recognizable. Captain Gore, the Bride, William Gracie. Some of them...
The Duelists, the Hitchhiking
Duelists,
Ghosts,
Hatbox Ghosts.
you know, Leota. There's so many.
Some of them are literally non-existent, and you could make up your own. Like, you could fanfic this. You could read these and have a lot of fun with what's there. So this is for you. If you are a creator, if you are an imaginer, this is so for you. And this specific group is amazing. To go next to Seekers of the Weird,
I think Seekers of the Weird is a little better than Haunted Mansion from Disney Kingdoms, like A+ versus A, just for the record.
I think that's very fair. Seekers of the Weird, is based off a Haunted Mansion idea of what the Haunted Mansion could be. This particular story is written by Brandon Seifert, who has, a really varied group of credits. Like he's written stuff like The Avengers. He's kind of been all over, and to go over the credits would get a little bit insane, but he's not like a name.
Which, what a comfort though. Like,
Right.
What a comfort that somebody who you're like, the credits are too long.
They're too long and they're too vast. I can't say, like, for DC, he's written Batman, and for Marvel, he has actually written The Avengers. But setting that aside, the artist Carl Molina, who did so much amazing work for Buffy, for the Buffy comics.
Anybody who thinks that they have a unique color streak in the front of their hair because they came up with it owes Carl Moline's Frey everything.
Yeah. This is just a great story. I think you should read this because I think one day it will be a movie. And I think if you read this today, you can say, I knew all about that 5-10 years ago.
Even if it's not a movie, I think the Joss Whedons and somebody less problematic, somebody who's actually a good person, Justin Simians, are just like, I pray every day that there will be a guy who's gay that I can be like, I want to be him.
Yeah.
I talk about it a little bit.
Because it's not Ryan Murphy, so...
Yeah, Hot Older Boyfriend is from a generation... I talk about that I have an older boyfriend. Hot Older Boyfriend is from a generation where sometimes the older gay men make him a little uncomfortable. But Justin Simian is such a cool guy. And, as far as I know at this point, he's a great creator who created one of the most important things for my awakening. I have never felt so dumb as when I watch clips from Dear White People. I feel like a bad person when I watch that. And thank God it exists. And that Disney said that guy should create the Haunted Mansion film.
Yeah.
That's the sort of reflection of understanding that I actually don't think Frights of Fancy reflects at all. Frights of Fancy is...
Wait, hold on. Are you talking Frights of Fancy or you're talking Seekers of the Weird?
No, I'm talking Frights of Fancy.
So we're moving on to Frights of Fancy.
Yeah, I think Frights of Fancy just sort of services the need of producing a Haunted Mansion comic, but it doesn't actually do anything. It's 110 pages.
Something like that. It's not super long.
It's an easy read, but for my same token, I would give the money to the 5 issues of Haunted Mansion, the 5 issues of Secrets of the Weird, or I would give it to the 7 issues of Haunted Mansion. I know we have 1 through 8 up there, and that is because if you're a dedicated internet fan, you can find you will find 2 of the 4 stories. Yeah. But only 7 issues were ever published. So if you're trying to go out to your local comic book shop, like the incredible Coast City Comics in Portland, or the amazing guys at Zap Comics in Manalapan, New Jersey, they'll only be able to get you 1 through 7.
I do want to say Haunted Mansion Frights of Fancy could be a younger person's introduction to either comics or Haunted Mansion, depending on what their deal is.
Could I just say then, read the 4 prose collections, the Disney Press Haunted Mansion prose collections. There's 4, and they are spectacular. I read all 4 on my Kindle Fire leading up to this. They were excellent. I read them very quickly because, frankly, they're for up to 6th grade. So I think they're actually labeled up to 9th grade, but it is definitely, as an educator, a 6th grade level. You can check those out. They're amazing. You can pick them up on Amazon for like $3.99, $4.99 in digital edition. The physical editions will set you back a little bit more, but that's sort of the premium you pay for Disney Anya.
I do want to give credit to Sina Grace, the writer of Frights of Fancy, a queer man, and we don't have enough of those in comics, who does a fantastic job of telling an exclusively ghost story. Even our main character is a recently ghost person, is a recently dead young girl.
Actually, I just want to say Sina Grace. If you've ever seen Sina Grace online and thought, wow, he seems like a good person, he must suck in person. Opposite.
Yeah.
He seems like a great person online, and he's actually far greater in person. His hallmark is experiential storytelling that makes you feel inclusive, even if you are not part of that audience. One of the things was so many people read Iceman and realized it allowed them to come out.
Yep.
So to read that he told a story about ghosts that involved a recently ghosted person when his Iceman involves a recently out person,
Yep.
There's a complication that is real to our experience as people, regardless of if it's coming out, getting a new job, starting a new school, or moving, that Sina Grace is able to make so palpably human in the pages of Frights of Fancy. I just don't want to sound like I'm shitting on the book, but compared to the 3 earlier editions, it is maybe the Baby Town book.
I definitely agree with that. I also want to throw out to Ego Bartoloni, the artist of this series or of this book.
Nothing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Who is a woman. So we've got another woman artist in this realm, and it's just important to shout them out. Last but not least, we have Disney Kingdoms, The Haunted Mansion, which is written by Joshua Williamson, who is currently doing some serious work in DC for the Night Terrors event that's happening.
Which is one of the, you can really see where they said, let's go to somebody with a little bit of an extreme view on surrealism, on horror, on experience. I sometimes feel like they give every event to a guy who is both gorgeous and a genius, like Scott Snyder. And while Scott Snyder can do anything, just take a look at American Vampire, which tells 73 genres in every 5 issues. It's important to sometimes give a book to a genre writer. And I really do agree with you that DC did the right job here.
And the artist is Jorge Coelho, who, it's gorgeously drawn. It's just a really cool story. The fact of the matter is, like I said, I think this is the one that they should make a movie out of. Page for page, panel for panel, storyboarded exactly as is. It is a young boy who has recently lost a loved one who was told, if you go to the Haunted Mansion, you can speak to the ghost of your loved one again, and you can have him back. And he goes, and of course, the ghosts are all there. Hijinks ensue. There is an antagonist. It is a very simple story, but it is mostly about he goes in and he meets a ghost, and the ghost goes, this is what I do here. This is my background. Don't go there. That's that ghost. That's their background. Here's that guy. This is his background. New person picks him up. I'm this ghost. This is my background. And so he is the lead character that we follow as the protagonist, who through meeting all these secondary and tertiary characters, we get to have all of their backstories. You might do a little bit of it in flashback. You might do a little bit of it in expository dialogue, but it is so much, hi, come into the house, experience the ghosts, because there are 999 of them, and that's cool. And it's just really, it gets that is the value proposition of the Haunted Mansion. That is something, like I said, that all of these books do. Even Seekers of the Weird, which is not specifically a Haunted Mansion thing, understands that the value proposition is in not the adventures of the protagonists, but in the setting being where the adventures of the protagonists take place, and how rich and dense that setting is, and how the characters that exist in it are so rife with storytelling potential. Grab any and all of these. They are fantastic. I definitely think the SLG one is most worth your time. I really hope somehow Disney finds a way to pull this back into public consciousness, maybe reprint it, maybe use it for something else. And otherwise, I truly hope that Seekers of the Weird becomes a viable property of some kind, and that these Haunted Mansion stories just get people going for the Haunted Mansion.
Knowing that Haunted Mansion is set to come in at third in the box office at $30 million behind what would have been in the pandemic era a number one at $30 million
Yep.
behind Barbie week 2, Oppenheimer week 2.
Yep.
It makes me long for the opportunity for a film to exist in a non-viral situation. You know,
Yeah.
Barbie and Oppenheimer, I could not be happier for Barbie. It's fine, I guess. You know, Oppenheimer represents the opportunity for something of its ilk to thrive academically. Sure, it's not super accurate to Oppenheimer's existence, but that anybody is thinking about the fact that bombs are bad is a really good thing in a world where so many blockbusters thrive on bombs, that I can't really be angry that Oppenheimer is doing well. If it's making somebody think a little bit extra about using what they might feel is nuclear force, then great. But I am a little bummed that something like Haunted Mansion is coming in third. Now, Kevo, you prepared a slide for video games for the Haunted Mansion franchise, and it actually really represents my frustration with Haunted Mansion gaming. The Nokia exclusive, including web games, a GameCube and GBA game that was canceled, that is an adaptation of the GameCube game for the film. You can see how little effort has ever truly been put into capturing the identity of the Haunted Mansion and portraying it in a way that's experiential or playable. So for me, I find myself frustrated because, you know, as we've said the whole episode, the main thing about this franchise is that you're able to project onto the ghosts, right? But if you're projecting onto the ghosts, if you're creating a context for these ghosts, perhaps you see yourself in the ghosted tree, in the ghostitude, in the ghosted dum-de-dum-de-dum. I don't know. There needs to be a term for like giant collective ghosts, like skein of geese, murder of crows, you know, snatch of whores. So there needs to be like an unhaunting of ghosts or something. But that you can see yourself in this, that you could project yourself, is why, for my money, for my research, the most successful exploration of Haunted Mansion, of the Ghost Host, of the 99 Happy Haunts, has been the Ghost Post ARG. There was a limited edition ARG where you could spend, I think it was like $120, and be one of 99 people to experience an app, a game, and mailers where you found a mystery that pertained to the heart of the Haunted Mansion. And as you posted it on Reddit, one of 999 people, as over 1 million people watched that subreddit, you were one of the denizens of the Haunted Mansion. And that's what we're talking about. That's why this episode has gone 21 minutes over time, because when we talk about the Haunted Mansion, we talk about the thing that started me on horror as a kid. You know, when I think about the Great Movie Ride, I think about being too afraid to open my eyes when Ripley was standing there with her back against the wall. I genuinely was too afraid to watch Alien until I was 18 years old. And my boyfriend was like, let's watch this. And I was like, okay. I really knew that if I said yes to renting something at Blockbuster, if I put out the $3.95, he would perform sexual acts that I wanted. And then we put the DVD in. And I was like, if you touch me, I will slap you. This was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. Alien is to this day my favorite film, bar none. Nothing comes close. Literally nothing comes close to how much I love Alien. And it never could have been part of who I was if it weren't for something like the Haunted Mansion. Now, I want to comment on this Haunted Mansion Clue Edition. Many people know a lot about me and a lot about my weird predilections within fandom. But many of you might not know that I own over 30 unique editions of Clue. And the Haunted Mansion and Tower of Terror Clue are my two favorites. I actually keep my Haunted Mansion Clue sealed in a box, unattainable to me, in my garage. I cannot get to it. But while you guys talk a little bit about experiencing the Haunted Mansion, I'm going to go get my Tower of Terror clue because it's very easily accessible. And then we're going to wrap this motherfucker up because it went way over time. But just a little bit about what the Haunted Mansion means to you, amazing gentlemen.
Well, first I want to say I am sort of bummed that I did not know a lot about Ghost Post. I am a huge ARG person, and I wish that I had been able to experience this. I'm also really curious about Call of the Spirits. I love a board game. I think it's really fascinating how many of these are skins of, there it is, are skins of, like Clue. The Haunted Mansion as a property and an entity lends itself very well to, you can do Haunted Mansion Monopoly, you can do Haunted Mansion Clue, and that's all very cool. I guess, the real danger there is you might miss the depth of the Haunted Mansion should you choose to just make it a pinball game and not an exploration of the Haunted Mansion in and of itself. I think it would
Oh, you mean like the movies?
I think it would make a phenomenal walking simulator. I think it would make the best, What Remains of Edith Finch, Dear Esther, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. You just walk through the house. You just
Great
experience the ghosts. You just get the stories. The thing I've been saying this whole time. I think it would be a phenomenal, immersive experience like that. And I, for the third time now, will mention Illusion Island. Disney just nailed platforming in a way that so few people ever do, including Disney with other games, honestly.
Oh, yeah, no, the second we shut this down, I'm going to go on and I'm going to play Illusion Island. I have it downloaded. I've had it pre-ordered for months. I'm so excited.
I love Lion King and Aladdin, but holy shit, those games are unplayably difficult. And I think that is a mistake. It was not like, oh, we're going to do it like this. Haunted Mansion totally nails it. I think Disney could nail a walking simulator of like one of their properties like Haunted Mansion, something that asks you to walk into the house and experience it. I kind of went off of Nico's prompt of what does the Haunted Mansion mean to me, but I think I kind of spoke to it in that, like, the Haunted Mansion to me is the 999 ghosts and how you get to experience each and every one of them, and it is what I will be looking for and looking forward to as I follow this property from here on out.
Kevo, do you have any closing thoughts as we wrap up the episode?
It's just such an interesting property, and I really do hear and agree with what you're saying about how it's supposed to come down to the ghosts, and I just want to reiterate, these weren't bad characters, these weren't bad performances.
No.
I really enjoyed even Owen Wilson's character for being the one that we were like, we'd immediately cut. I'm not like saying cut him because I hate him.
Yeah.
I'm saying cut because there was so much that you could have drawn from the original property. The only character that I really feel like we have any sense of that there was any existing canon for that wasn't created for this film was Gracie. It wasn't even really, I feel, the Leota the way I know Leota. It definitely wasn't Hatbox Ghost the way that we know Hatbox Ghost as a character from the
I'm glad we never
Haunted
mentioned
Mansion
his
canon.
name.
And so that just made it weird. It made all of it very weird choices. And it's not that this wasn't an excellent version of what it was, but it was not necessarily the best use of Haunted Mansion and its property and its characters and just all the things that you could have done with them. Your perspective on the captain, and if that is who that character was that got that much focus, then that was one of the more points of the film where I was like, why are you focusing on this ghost? Isn't he just a random guy from one of the paintings in the hallway? If it's the one you were referring to, then that was at least something, and there were definitely moments where you got to see ghosts and be excited about them, but they all have stories and they all have history, and it kind of just felt instead like this mosh of the ghosts are a character entity together, and you could have done so much more with that instead of having to create these original characters who these actors gave great performances, but maybe they could have given great performances, like Nico said, the Wilson brothers as the duelists would have been really cool. Um, Tiffany Haddish as Madame Leota, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Just, it's
I kind
supposed
of
to
thought
be
that's
about
what
the
we were getting,
ghost.
honestly.
Yeah, I thought we were going to be getting something more. Maybe even something where like it had started with 995 haunts and we got 3 more over the course of the movie. Like the fact that it started with 999 and we only needed 1 more, there was so much less of a threat in that way because we didn't see anyone die and become a ghost. There were so many more things you could have done. I really root for and am enthusiastic about and support this movie as it was, but I really hope we get to start seeing more from this property. There's so much potential for Disney Plus in terms of an animated series based off of this film, an animated series just based off of the concepts. So many things you can do that I really hope we start seeing more adaptations and more use of Haunted Mansion as a property.
Well, Kevo, until we come back and get a chance to see more Haunted Mansion as a property, or our look at Secret Invasion, plus our regular rundown of all the reality TV you can stomach or maybe even not. Kevo, TK, gentlemen, where can everybody find you on the entirety of the interwebs?
Well, you can find me tooling around at Kevoreally. That's Kevoreally. Teak, where can the folks find you?
You can find me at TK Elemental. Nico, where can the folks find you?
Oh, that would be the one and only Nico Action. It's NICOACTION, but some places it's .bsky.social because I don't have control over that. But until we return to talk about who's a scroll, who ain't so green, and also how did Kana make it to the final 2? I don't know what to say about this. But until we return to talk about that and my exhaustion with that ghost, you guys can check us out all over the interwebs at X is for Show. That's X is for Show. And until then, stay strong, be brave, and evolve daily. And don't forget, there's always room for one more.
So
Be
make sure to
spooky
like and
ghosts.
subscribe and
Oh.
join us here at our Haunted Mansion and let us know what you think, what you're looking for. We always appreciate you guys hanging out with us for this period. And yeah, thank you for joining our pack.
Be a
I
spooky
do
ghost.
need to point out that Kevo's right. You should like and subscribe and be a ghost.
Like and subscribe and don't ghost.
Don't ghost us. Just be a ghost, die,
With
and
us.
stay on our show.
Yeah, that. You got
Haunt
it.
us.
Boo.
Boo. Boo to you. And we will see you.